Just listen. Fair use.
I will tell you what to write.
All right. Okay.
So I'm asking you. You're not gonna write down nothing. I will tell you when to write.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So do you have the $200 with you now at home?
Do I have what? Oh, 200, the 200. Oh,
Do you?
what I wrote down here, the $200.
Yes. Do
$200.
do
Yeah.
you have it at
Yeah,
home?
I do have it. Yeah.
All right. So listen what you're gonna do. Now you're gonna write. I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna write, so you write it down. All right. This is
Okay.
what you're gonna write down now.
Okay.
Yes. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell
Yes.
you what to write.
I'm going to
Yes. You're gonna write
tell
vanilla.
you
Va-
what
listen.
to
Hello. Lord God.
write.
You don't need to write that. What's wrong with you?
Vanilla. Did you say vanilla?
That's the only thing
She know this is a scammer trying to play her, but she playing him.
you need to write. It seems like everything I said to you, you write it down. You're wasting my time.
You're wasting my
Yes.
time.
He hung up.
Hello.
Hello, we keep getting disconnected. I'm trying to. I
No,
think I might have
listen,
hit it with my
listen.
cheek. I'm
Because
holding the phone with the side of my cheek so I can write.
no,
And I
listen,
didn't know if I
listen,
might have
listen.
hit the
Yeah,
end
listen.
button or something.
Can you
'cause
listen to what
it
I'm
has a
saying?
button that
Just
sometimes I
listen.
press by
Just
accident.
listen.
Listen.
Yes, I'm
Listen.
listening.
Listen.
I'm
I'm
trying to get
listening.
y'all.
You just keep talking. Listen.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm listening. Yeah, because like sometimes I can actually turn my phone up if I need to hear it more. If the person is low,
You just need
it
to
has a button.
listen.
I'm
Listen.
listening. Should I turn it up so you don't have to yell? Because it seems like you might be yelling a little bit.
Yes.
I can turn
Turn
it
it
up.
up. Turn it
All
up.
right.
Yes. Turn it
All
up.
right.
Yes. Turn it up.
All right. Okay.
You can hear me better now.
Yes. Can you hear me better?
A lot better.
Can you hear me better? Okay. Good.
A,
Good.
a lot
A
better.
lot
It's
better.
louder. So
It's louder.
all right. So
Here, let me
yes.
try this
So
button
listen
again.
now. It's a lot. Yes. It's a lot better now.
Okay. All right.
All right. Listen. You don't need to
Listen.
write nothing. I will tell you what
Listen.
to write. You don't need to write everything I said to you. How are you gonna write everything I say to you?
How are you?
You don't need to write that. Don't write that.
Well, what if I thought you said to write everything that you say though?
No.
But I'm trying to take down all of the information that I can.
Listen. You don't need to write that. You don't need to write that. Are you
don't
stupid? Are you crazy?
need to
I
write
tell you
that.
what to write.
Okay, let me just
Don't write that.
let me just start a new page and I'll put at the top.
Listen.
Listen.
Can you hear me?
Listen.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yes, I can. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
You know, you're
I
not
can
following it.
hear you. Am I supposed to be writing like how the conversation is going, or just the key points?
No.
What am I supposed to be doing then?
The only thing you need to write, I'm gonna tell you
Is
what to write
is
now.
what you say.
The
Okay.
only thing
All right. Okay.
you're gonna write vanilla gift card.
You're going to write.
You don't need to write
Vanilla.
that. You
You
don't need
just
to
told me to
listen.
write vanilla
Hello.
gift card.
The only thing you're gonna write is vanilla gift card.
The only thing
You don't need to write that. Just write vanilla gift card.
you
All right, y'all just need to listen. I'm gonna stop this right here. I'm trying to pick up from where we were. Let me see if I'm gonna do. Let me read this first. We had Bruce come on here, and he wanted to start talking about Berean, just love them Europeans, and we into Eurocentric Christianity, and Ruddy Brew was on. I still ain't what what they freestyling and telling me, and what I'm reading them words. I ain't getting that interpretation. I'm gonna tell y'all that. But what I can't deny, what a lot of people feel, the charges Bruce constantly saying people eating it up. That out and y'all just obsessed with protecting the white man. We might as well put it out there. This Dr. Bancho, I know some people don't like that. I think this is from that other apologetic book. Why we must confront whitewashing. Say what you want. That's why I have people having this talk on the internet. I'm bringing up stuff about Black Power. And I'm going to read this thing. The whitewashing of Christianity is its Eurocentric focus has led to growing sentiment among people of African descent, as well as people across the globe, as well as people across the globe, as well as people across the globe. Y'all just listen. That Christianity is a Western created, European influenced, white owned religion of oppression. This is Dr. Vince Bantu. Look him up if you don't know who he is. While this is historically inaccurate, there are legitimate reasons that many people have adopted this assertion. As Dr. Bantu explains, Christianity has been perverted into a mechanism of tyranny by many Western nations. The main reason for this growing sentiment is historical cultural whitewashing, as well as underemphasized reality that the gospel took firm root in Africa and the Middle East and Asia long before it hit the West. This is the professor of church history specializing in the Ethiopian church. In order to accurately present the gospel and the Christian faith, we must understand that Christianity is not the cultural property of any single racial or ethnic group. White folk don't own Christianity. That's the game. White folk don't own Christianity. That's the deception. In order to accurately present the gospel and the Christian faith, we must understand that Christianity is not the cultural property of any single put the name of his book up there, Out of Many a Multitude. What's the name of his book? Ethnic group. It has always existed of a family of chosen people composed of every nation. Where the Israelites at? Every nation. This is Bible. Of every nation, tribe, and tongue. That's Bible. John saw something. Oh, y'all don't like John. I forgot. He ain't the type of Israelite. I tell y'all what. Y'all like talking about this Christianity, ain't that Christianity. This Israelite ain't that Israelite of the first century. This stuff that these Israelites talking about today ain't what Paul and John and the original Israelites spoke about. This ain't that. This is a different Israelite movement here. Y'all like talking about Christianity. This how we got to treat each other the same way. Y'all broad brush, I got a broad brush. But something inside of me say, no, be fair. No, hear it out. Especially, because I'd be surprised at some of these Christians, especially at the fact that leading scholars across the world know that there's been a whitewashing. You folk come in and just act like these folk is all talking crazy. Oh, do they got revisionist history? Yes. We might as well call it what it is. Let me finish reading this. The pink part at the bottom. Because many non-Western people groups have been made to feel culturally alienated from the gospel. Let me bring up the people from India, the brother from India talking about Jesus. Because many non-Western people groups have been made to feel culturally alienated from the gospel. It is imperative. No, he's nobody, but he's somebody. The leader of urban apologetics, they introduced y'all to Dr. Vince Bantu, so he's somebody in apologetics. He's somebody out here. So don't start backpedaling now. All right, let's keep going. Because many feel culturally alienated from the gospel, it is imperative that we explore the negated history of non-Western Christianity. That's what some folk know, because folk talking out their mouth, they don't know about the Ethiopian church. They don't know about that. I hate when these people come in. Didn't I say, Israelites, be quiet, just listen? Didn't I say, just listen? You're doing like the lady in the video. Now you're mocking me. I said, just listen. This one talking about, is he lying? What's good, Nameless Soul? What's good with you? Let me stop that and let me bring this up. This guy didn't even check it, but something is going to be said here that's wrong. Where Alton in the Mac? That's who I need. That's who I need right now. Before I get y'all this medicine right here. Nah, that's Johnny Mac. I'm gonna mix them up, and I'm gonna mix it up, and I'm gonna dish it out. All right, listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to this. Y'all already know there's a rise of even atheism, voodoo, hoodoo in our communities. Listen to what's being said right here. Somebody said this to me. Of course it's not accurate, especially this. Why everything go back to Constantine? Was that Reddy Brew who said Constantine killed Jews? Y'all be adding stuff to the story to put y'all Hebrew roots mix on it. Did Constantine kill Jews? Did Constantine force Jews or pagans to become Christian and kill them from the primary sources alone? I'm sick of Yohanan, them Negro videos. I'm sick of Nathaniel and them videos, and y'all learning from them and coming back to me with that garbage.
Christianity became synonymous with white supremacy around the 4th century with Constantine, the emperor, right? In which they made it the Roman national religion. If you refuse to adhere to his Christian rule, then you would be beheaded. So
if you refuse to adhere, down Constantine was doing, if you refuse to become a Christian, he would behead you. Y'all know everything.
I think that historically speaking, Christianity has been used to oppress and enslave a lot of people globally.
Now, is that a lie? I said I deal with the truth, not the lie, but I can hear what's being said. I ain't got to take everything, because that first part, I don't know.
I think it's great that you take it that far back, but I think you have to really separate theology from Black theologies for the sake of conversation. Because I think that when I talk to a lot of atheists and agnostics, we speak from the vacuum of Black experience, and we already understand in America, number one, that's troubled water, right? Globally, it's also troubled water. I think a broad blanket would cover that it's suppressed people of color. We don't see ourselves in scripture. We don't see ourselves being, told. And when we were learning these stories in church back in slave times, we were told that our God wanted us to be slaves. So that very thing was utilized to suppress us. For heaven's sakes, the KKK came out of the church, right? So we do have a problem, and we can't just say the church is the end all to be all. It's a complicated conversation.
Right, with that said, let me just put a pin on that. Let's get to the 3 gears and.
Yes, so I disagree that the Black church has shaped Black culture, especially as in the affirmative entirely. Because what that does is it ignores our ancestors before the transatlantic slave trade. It ignores the fact that they had their own cultural beliefs, and that there were many contributions that Black folks have made to this country that were not centered in Christianity. When we think about Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was the founder of Negro History Week, who was Harvard educated, who had deep criticisms of the Black church, his roots were in free thought and criticism. Lorraine Hansberry, who wrote A Raisin in the Sun, Zora Neale Hurston, the famous author, and other Black folks who were not religious at all. Just because it is prevalent does not mean that it has entirely shaped our communities for the better. And I think that we have to be mindful of the diversity that has been within our communities that has not always been rooted in Christian and religious faith. Our communities have ignored the non-religious, atheist, and humanist presence.
No, Jordan said, well, we told that our gods want us to be slaves. No, but they would say they would read stuff like slaves obey your master. And y'all remember that slave Bible. They turned around and did what they wanted to do with that thing right there. Fair use.
Presence for far too long, simply because there is a prevalence of Christianity in our communities.
I actually agree with you, because I don't think Christianity is supposed to take hold of somebody's culture and completely, like, change it into something completely different. I think that Christianity welcomes different cultures. I think that true biblical Christianity looks at somebody in a different culture and says, hey, even though you're of this culture, even though you believe in different things or whatever, you can still be welcomed in the kingdom of God.
You see why the other gentleman said that it's a complex, it's a nuanced conversation?
Well, I find that very interesting because, as someone previously said, there are 45,000 denominations of Christianity, some that might be more welcoming and some that are totally damning.
Right.
And we're talking about the same
Is that true?
book. We're talking about the same text that has been interpreted, some for that has been used in the positive, and some that has definitely been used to enslave our ancestors, disenfranchise our communities, and also look at things through a lens that has demoralized us.
That's why these conversations are ongoing. I'm seeing even in Africa and stuff, I'm seeing all over individuals even stepping up to answer, because so many people in Africa. Yes, that's why it's called Catholic. It's universal. What's good, Storm Ready? Indians. Let me pull up this brother right here. I read that book. I can close that. Let me pull this up right here, because he's attempting to answer some of these claims. So many of them have come about. Let me see if this will play.
Is when he becomes your Lord and Savior, it doesn't erase your culture or your person.
And he's answering what's at the top. African descendants have forgotten your real history in relation to Christianity, question, or you just don't know it. Listen to how he answer it. Because once you're a Christian, you just a dum-dum.
Beauty of Jesus Christ is when he becomes your Lord and Savior, it doesn't erase your culture or your personality. It simply becomes the center of it. I am African from Congo, from the tribe Luba. In my tribe, we call God Efulu Mukulu, which means the Great Spirit.
They call him the Great Spirit. Plenty of people across the world knew the Great Spirit or the High Spirit. Somebody at the Tower of Babel knew the High Spirit. There was one great God above everything. They were doing crazy stuff, but they knew there was one Great Spirit. Yep. Before y'all had y'all religion and y'all book, there was one Great Spirit, and other people on the planet knew who he was before the Israelites came to this planet. Let me tell y'all that right now. Somebody on this planet got up off that ark and knew the great High Spirit that wasn't an Israelite.
What we have done is simply to redirect our faith towards Jesus Christ, to make him our Efulu Mukulu.
Does that get y'all mad that y'all don't own the Great Spirit? That bothers some of you people, because you could be something like these white folk that y'all claiming, that a lot of people claiming, because y'all control the Great Spirit and everything is centered around y'all, just like white folk. We got to talk about that. Does the Bible promote supremacy? I wish y'all would answer that. No other nation have he known. I know the scripture's finna come. Y'all don't know I done read that book. I read that book, boy. I'm gonna tell y'all, I gotta go back and tell y'all that story. Let me play some Dante for y'all. Go back and tell y'all that story about Dr. Ben and we the black Jews. And when I came in contact with them Ethiopian sisters, she said, y'all not us. I want to talk about some supremacy a little bit today.
Our Great Spirit, our God. So, no, my story isn't forgotten. I know who I am. I'm African, from Congo, from the tribe.
He know who he is. Once you in Christ, these folk want to amp you like you don't know who you are. But I'll give it to y'all. He's African and he's an apologist. But I'll give it to y'all. There are some people that's born in America that descended, transatlantic slave trade, that descended from people, they don't know where they come from. I can play Eric Mason talking to R.L. Strobel. And he said, if you ask the average black person, people been talking. You know, some of them Israelites come around here harass y'all, but people been talking. And I'll talk about that Israelite harassment too, because we got to take some people in baby steps. If the church has been moving in baby steps, and Lisa Fields and them, Dr. Bantu and them, they admit that Christianity was used. Some of y'all in deep deception in some church in the corner, out in the country somewhere next to some cows that ain't never heard of the Klan, and the Klan be the Christian organization. Some of y'all, but others know that they had something called a slave Bible, that they edited the Bible, that the church and the religious institutions, the secular institutions and the world and the government work together. So say what you want, Reddy Brew, there was some powers. He confused a little bit on that Greek thing. But there were some powers at work. Now that gonna offend somebody, but we gotta lay into it. Let me stop this off. They lied about other stuff. We're not even talking about the white image of Jesus, but if they lied about other stuff, they call it a whitewashing. Y'all said big deal, everybody in the 10 Commandments and all them folk, white folk, and all. Y'all, somebody say big deal, but somebody out here that's born again, y'all know the other guy, Jerome Gay, somebody out here that's a minister, somebody out here that's recognized, has said that there's been some whitewashing, even white folk. Tim Wise. The girl said, we know Jesus is white and Santa Claus is white. That other guy named Tim Wise, he said, that's the problem right there. Y'all run around conquering with the white Jesus. What's the other lady name used the N-word name mad with her? Jane Elliott? What's the other sister name that could come to the cookout? Ain't but 2-3 dozen white folk could come to the cookout. What's the old lady name? Y'all ain't gonna tell me. Y'all don't want to help. All right, let me go ahead. Let me go ahead right here. We bang on the Hebrews a lot, but we turned around and we said certain things. Let me see which one I'm going to add. Let me see what I'm going to do. Let me see how I'm going to do this. Just listen. That's all I'm asking you to do is listen. Let me play some of this right here, Fervent Charity. We asked the folk to make the connection. I don't know. Y'all said in the beginning, I need to go find my own video. Somebody tell me. I'm not going to even bring that up. West Africa, Judah. They were white Jews converted to black Jews. Timmy Tim came on here screaming and said that his slide and Garfield slide are the same slides. And he gave Dante that work. Dante ran off and Dante didn't want to answer. He said that Dante, he was putting all his sources in the comment section and Dante got it, deleted, and blocked it. I'm going to tell y'all what I feel is truthfully for the most part. Apologists, ministers, Christians, y'all will blow at that history, but y'all haven't been looking into the history. Y'all not really into the history like that. Y'all see, I always say Richardson came through and he blew about the Wayne State and all of that stuff and left. And ain't heard a thing from. The truth of the matter is a lot of those folk, they're not into history. Dante's been involved in history because he's been putting out a lot of information that's helping to what we would call wake people up. If you're not into the history, you ain't got to be into this. If you apologetics, if you deal with the occult, whatever it is. But we always say on this channel, at least I tell y'all, not that brand new Escalade. Why am I going to go to the guys that do transmissions, that check windows and try to let them put the transmission in? You got to go to the specialists. I'm not going to the transmission dudes to tell them put the 5% tin all around, front window, back window, sides, everything. I'm not going on that brand new thing. I'm not going to tell them to do that. They have bubbles on them. I'm gonna go to who deal with window tint all the time. I think that's fair. Then I'll tell you about, like I said, we the black Jews, how Dr. Ben got in Cornell, and he used to talk about the Portuguese Jews and things that people in the church don't know. What's his other little book? He had a pamphlet, Black Seminary and a Black Clergy Without a. I'll go look it up. It's been such a long time, but listen to this. Oh, somebody sent this right here. Listen to this, and let's just listen. Let's just listen. Because people claim that they've been showing and proving, and everybody been quiet or moving the goalpost. I don't want to have none of that. You can't have that if you really want honest dialogue. They blow at us, we blow at them, but a few sensible people come together so we can have these talks and we can think.
kidnapping tales that still linger on this coast.
Because as far as I'm concerned, when people like even my man Alton, I heard Cherry on something but 30 the bump. I disagree with that 100%. That's church talk. That's church talk to get you over something, to make you not want to look. That's just me, Berean. That's my personal opinion. Ain't nothing been thoroughly debunked with that history. What they turn around and do, they wrote a book, they dropped a documentary on, what's the name of that documentary? Unspoken. Yeah, that was good. That wasn't dealing with that 400 years. That wasn't dealing specifically with that. So what the church is acting like, they could be walking in delusion. What the church is acting like is that if there is evidence, is irrelevant. That's what they're acting like. Let me ask y'all a question. Why are we going back and forth? Somebody said, well, you know, you had all the urban. I ain't had an urban apologist block. I play a video. Even people I'm beefing with, them dudes. What's the other brother name? The rapper from Buffalo and Black Tastic and them. They jumped on Bill even after we beef. After we beef, tell you jumped on. After we beef, Damon Richardson and them jump on. It is what it is. K-Dub, other people, whoever, if I'm playing a video, then the link is out there, they can jump on. They're going to sell that delusion. Mike Holloway heard, they're going to sell the delusion Berean on their side. They're going to sell the delusion, but the truth of the matter is, urban apologists ain't put that work in. Then why did we have to go get Garfield in 93 to start blowing at Dante and them? If we had people putting the work in, I'm talking to Christians only. Israelites, y'all say something, my box looking heavy right now. Mind your business. I'm not talking to y'all. Why we had to go get unsaved folk to deal with the history if we got so many seminaries? Zadok, thank you. If we got so many seminarians, they don't specialize in that. They don't look into it. They haven't looked into it. Or they don't think it's relevant. Of course, y'all just trying to give us back the law. Y'all remember what honestly said? Two things could be right. It ain't got to be always the law, the law, the law, the law, the law. And then, like I said, all of this is coming back because the elder hit me, and the elder said there's some credibility to that stuff. The elder that I respect that was rocking with us 7 years ago. 7 years ago. So let's play some of this stuff and let's just see if it's nonsense. Faithful, I think, was touching some stuff. But nobody really have touched this transatlantic slave trade in the history in Portugal. Nobody. No urban apologists, nothing. We got to admit that. First thing we got to do is admit, I got to admit I'm crazy and got some craziness going on. I got to admit that. First thing we got to do is admit that and stop this. What's that? And stop the delusion. Stop the delusion. Because some of them are in the delusion. Then they just, drop a documentary, put a book out there, and that's what, we're going to do it. Real Christians, the real people going to read a book. But if you want to win souls, and this is something that's growing on the internet, I tell a younger crew, I can tell a younger folk, boy, the internet got to be well. TikTok, if they don't shut TikTok down, 2.2 million people jump in with that Putin lie. Putin got the same suit on, the same tie on. What president? Never mind, you can't even tell these folks, because when we expose to y'all that it's fraudulent, y'all say, so what? The white man still lied. Two wrongs don't make a, never mind, because some of y'all on the other side, all y'all want to do is believe. Let's listen to this and see what this damnable, at least I want to listen to something. I don't care if folk beefing, folk not beefing, at least I want to listen to something. Oh, crazy Bruce coming around here, ain't even keeping no Shabbat, want to get to harassing me. But Dante, tell you, Shonda Large, Sister E, got to talk about the First Lady. Shout out to Sister E, the bishop, the First Lady. That's all I hear coming out of his mouth. Let's go.
Some of the kidnapping tales that still linger on this coast show the straits into which, at times, men were driven for cargo. At Annabom, where the people are Negro Portuguese, they are ever looking forward to hearing mass from the mouth of a priest.
Now, I remember Dr. Bennett, We the Black Jews. I'll tell you, 1990, he said Negro Portuguese. Now, where's Alton in that? He didn't say Jew. because that could be deception. A Negro Portuguese don't necessarily mean a Jew, but we're trying to see something because Spain and the Spaniards and them getting ran out and some Jews going to Portugal, and then we're just trying to make some connection. I know history is boring. I know them genealogies, them names and all of that stuff, them long lists, all that nonsense and chronicles. I know that's boring. Sometimes you got to go through it. Let's just see. And like I'm saying, if folk lied about other stuff and attempted to wipe people out of history, break up the human family, and say that blacks were lowest intellectually, I don't know. All that stuff been haunting me and coming back. 2 million black folk can't find out something is a deep fake. But Tell You Ministry, and he dropped it. Let me see what that video was up to. Because them same people, their hearts were right. They would go and share and be like, no, this is, we can't bear witness with that. This is a deep fake. And retract the statement. They would never do that. Their hearts are deceitful. They're deceived and they're deceiving others. If the awakening is the truth, all you got to do is stand on that business and just, Dante say he just reading sources from white Christian men back in the days. I'd rather respect this than that nonsense y'all picking up on TikTok. Ooh, the church need to be empty. The church need to be empty. That lady said nobody gonna be in church this Sunday. She's a lie. Let's just put it that way. She's a lie. Let's go.
Some of the kidnapping tales that still linger on this coast show the straits into which, at times, men were driven for cargo. At Annabom, where the people are Negro Portuguese, they are ever looking forward to hearing mass from the mouth of a priest. A Spaniard learning this, dressed up a pair of ecclesiastics, landed them, and whilst the function was proceeding, seized the whole congregation and carried them triumphantly to market. So now, this right here tells you that these people were Negro Portuguese, and the Spanish person deceived them, and while they were having church, mass, he seized them and took them to this slave market. Negro Portuguese were put into the transatlantic slave market.
Now, if these Negro Portuguese were the new Christians or Jews who were forced into conversion into Christianity, but they hated them anyway and pushed them to slavery, we might be going somewhere. That don't mean 400 year prophecy is real, just one step at a time. Y'all wanted the folk to prove something. If the folk prove something, at least acknowledge, all right, them baby steps, they prove something. Don't go into a delusion. Don't switch the game up and start talking about, well, what difference does it make? Don't do that nonsense. Let's not do that nonsense now. Because you can say what you want. They don't have time, because even when the other dude came on, he said, oh, don't believe it or not, something is in the works. What y'all making a Mission Impossible 10? All over the country? What y'all? He said, oh, don't be deceived. So like a new documentary is coming out. Well, where the hell is it? That's all I'm saying. It's been a long time. That's what Eric B said. Let me play some Eric B for y'all. Because y'all want to, I be running around here acting crazy, but I be thinking. I've been thinking. I'm remixing Beyonce. Let's go. Matter of fact, let's hear this whole clip. Watch the full. I've seen this thing 3 times. It was sent by somebody here, right here. Watch the full video. Let me see what's going on right here. If it'll play.
This is We've been saying the whole time, these were not what you call sub-Saharan Africans. These were Negro Portuguese. They had been expelled from Spain and Portugal. If you guys have been following this study, the Spanish Jew is always dark. We've gone over this. We've seen the descriptions. So now they're in this West African area. And in this West African area, you have the Kingdom of Judah. You have Sao Tome. Now we're going to talk about the Kingdom of Judah in a minute. Let me see. Matter of fact, let me pull up a map for you guys. All right, so this is probably the best known map, or the most well-known map, is created by Emmanuel Bowen, 17.
All right. Damon Richardson and Nefertiti did the Kingdom of Judah thing, right? Who else did the Kingdom of Judah thing?
47. You can see this map on the Library of Congress. Let me click there real quick. Right here, a new and accurate map of Negro land in the adjacent countries. And if you come over here, you can see right here, Kingdom of Judah or Widda, the slave coast, Widda, Judah. So now this is the most famous map of this particular area. And so you will see people try to debunk this map. You can go down here, get all the information about it, see who was involved. You'll see people try to debunk this map. And I remember when this map really first started, like, I guess, getting out there to a lot of people. It had been out there, but when a lot of people started talking about it, people were trying to say it's fake and all kind of other things. So now, for years, I've been collecting these maps. This is the Kingdom of Judah or Widda Mapping Project on blackhistoryinthebible.com. You can find it there, bhitb.org. The earliest map I've been able to locate so far starts in 1707 France, and it spells it Judah. So now we have all of these maps. There are 31 maps total that I found so far. They range from 1707 all the way down to 1885. You see the Kingdom of Judah. Sometimes it's spelled Widda, Wada, Widda, Fida, Judah. You see these different spellings of the names on the maps, right? So now when you come over to here, this is the French source that I've told you guys about many times. This is from 18.
Keem said somebody debunked it. That's what I'm saying. That with Nefertiti and Damon Richardson. I know there was some back and forth beefing. Let me take this to the beginning. See if Jay Jackson and get some timestamps.
Like to have this narrative, get into that. Make sure you check out undeniable full color evidence of Black Israelites in the Bible. It has 1,690 ratings. It is 4.8 out of 5 stars, and it has been out since September 11th, 2019. It's now 2024, so it's been out going on 5 years, and it's 4.8 out of 5 stars. It's available on Amazon.com and Barnes and Noble. So if you haven't got your copy, please go grab your copy. If you're tired of arguing about the evidence, just show the images. Once again, Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Now, before we jump into everything, if you want to support at any time,
he said show the images
during this video.
All right, now, so you know people gonna put out images. A lot of people stuck on images, so we got to get one thing. I said, these Vogel got somebody that specializes. Let me leave people alone.
Like BHITB. After this is over, if you want to support, you can click the super thanks beneath the video. You can check out the merch shop. You can always, again, hit the Cash App or the PayPal, or you guys can join the channel as a channel member. Shout out to all the new channel members. Shout out to the patrons that continue to support, and shout out to everybody who continues to support via Cash App and PayPal.
He said, Red Letter said that book alone that he was talking about, that book alone will show you that the Putin thing was a bunch of BS. He got a book. Another one is Negro Rulers of Europe. Yeah. Well, the only reason I was into that because I was, involved in that Dr. Ben Van Sertima stuff and that original man stuff and all of that. But church folk not into that right there. We got to ask some questions. We do got to ask some questions. Did people come in contact with other people? Did the Indians, I didn't want to start with Dane Calloway, did the Indians come in contact or seen African people before they seen European people? That other Russian, and she ain't white, that other Russian lady, she brought up the whole thing. She said, how was evidence of cocaine? What was cocaine doing in Egypt in the mummies? I said, boy, these folks something else. And you'll find that in South America. And where we got evidence of that from? They said, people was traveling, but a lot of those folks in their minds, like those people, they have no boats. Y'all heard Pastor Manning from Atla Ministry. Y'all didn't have no seaworthy boats. Y'all ain't had no boats. Black folk ain't had nothing. Was a narrative painted. Supremacy and Christianity with the government was a narrative painted. Jim Crow came out later on. That's we better than you. We separate. And nothing was equal. Back of the bus doctrine. So if people had a racist lens and thought that black people was beneath them, Black people never contributed to anything on the whole planet in the whole history of the world. Their interpretation of history and anything else, they were like, automatically, I know this ain't no black folk built none of this. Church folk, they're going to say that's ungodly to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. He said, I should have kept, well, I go to that. He said, around, he said, oh, you were sent the clip too. Oh, they sharing information.
All right. So now, before we get started, let's address a few things. So people like to have this narrative that we're talking Afrocentrism or that we're making up a doctrine. People come on and say the most, and they don't acknowledge that what I'm doing on this channel is I'm reading from sources, the majority of which are written by white European men. Here and there, like tonight, we're going to show you a source from a European woman, Hannah Adams. And I'm talking about white Europeans once again.
Hannah Adams, is she the fat lady that's she's the biggest white, chubbier white sister that's lecturing with those two other professors on that YouTube video? I'll stop this thing.
And so people don't acknowledge that I'm reading directly from sources written by white people before any of us were allowed to read in this country.
So is that fair? This was never written to black people. He said Garfield, okay, he said Garfield got a video on them cocaine mummies. Said I ain't gonna never hear nothing that random church folk. I ain't gonna hear none of that. Because they ain't worried about, black folk making moves and all of that stuff and whatever. They just send the cross and Christ, and that's good. You heard Jay, the producer, said folk ain't historians, but folk making historical claims and saying something ain't right. We beefing about Ruddy Brew and them about Easter and the feast day change and what happened, but some things took place. I know there's a spirit in Israel, but I'm not going to sleep like there's not a spirit in the church. I told y'all, leading apologists. I said, just go live, one of them go live and say the Christmas tree was not around in Paul and them days, not original to the church. He couldn't do it. He said, oh man, you know the tree. And I know, Negro, turn the cameras on and say it. He couldn't do it. He turned around, he played a Hank Hanegraaff video. I don't give a, boy, I ain't think about Hank Hanegraaff, them white folk. Forgive me. That's what the church folk, man, when you start that stuff. I said, sometimes they need to hear it from the leader. It's not original. That don't mean Jeremiah 10 is right. The Israelites are crazy, but there's something like when they say it's raining outside, hell no, you're going to believe them lies? They had a fake a whole article out there about Hitler. I'll throw up the Hitler article, but I'm not crazy enough. I'm not crazy enough to join that with the readings of what Dante and them doing. No, man, y'all got me confused. The block is the block. Don't think you spin the block and come out here talking about Wayne State and y'all smashed everything and the little minions just repeating what you said. When Yak Gang and other folk done stepped up and challenged you on that, and we ain't seen from y'all. We ain't heard from y'all. You ain't got to come back here, but y'all got channels. Y'all done put out books and everything, but y'all is skipping all over. Skip to the Lou, my darling. Y'all skipping over a lot of stuff that may not need to be skipped over. That's all I be saying. That's all I be saying. We got to peep the game on both sides. Now, if y'all ain't got that work, you ain't got the work. And I've been saying, pay somebody, y'all give one of them folk money to research it out so they can lay it out. But no. I remember we was meeting up in that thing and we was all talking after that conference. The other guy said, I'm gonna raise money and I'm gonna just set a couple of y'all out there and y'all gonna travel and lecture on this thing right here. And he's like, I'm gonna raise about 250,000. About 250,000. Boy, these black folk ain't finna spend no money. Not to hear this, they'll rather fall out in tongues. I wonder if they'll spend that 259. They got to get it from a couple of different churches. No one church got money, but he had some people behind him willing to support. Some other, even the white bottom, willing to support. But it's that awakening ain't nothing. A couple of deluded black folk don't mean nothing. Let's just see what delusion he preaching.
I'm talking about the descendants of slaves. And so they'll say that I'm making up stuff or that I'm making doctrines or that I'm just trying to Afrocentrize or blackwash the Bible and history when I'm not the one doing anything. I'm just reading from sources written by good old white Europeans. And sometimes that
Fervent Charity, I'm telling you right now, I thought I heard that, but I might have been. Fervent Charity, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a red letter question. Have white people used Deuteronomy 28? Never mind. I don't even want to bring it up. I want to be put out the church. I want to get to heaven. Church folk tell you if you're going to heaven or hell, they're going to tell you who's going to make it and who ain't going to make it based on them. So I better shut my mouth. I still might got a chance to make it in. Got to be in their good graces, though. Not God's good graces. Got to be the church folk good graces so you could get in because they got the keys.
that medicine from the white bottle hits extra hard and people don't know how to deal with it. So what they will resort to is lying. And they do this because, unfortunately, people have been lied to and deceived about history. And many people think they know more about history than they do. And often what happens is people have a Cliff Notes version of history. But when you start to dig into the fine details of history, you find out that everything that you may have believed may have been slightly inaccurate, and it may have its origins in someplace else, like the Amazons. We're going to briefly mention the Amazons tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And this first source I'm going to read is from Fordham University. And all these links will be in the description or the comments section. For the
All right, so we put it in the description. Fordham is in the Bronx in New York, if I'm correct. Fordham is recognized institution. This ain't like that Putin stuff and a talk over. And then I said, where is it? How come it's not on Al Jazeera radio? How come it's not an Associated Press didn't put nothing about? This ain't that. This is from, you could get on the internet. It don't seem like you're trying to hide nothing. And he put the link out there on the internet, and it's from Fordham University. Fordham University is recognized in the United States of America. It ain't like them other Israelites got a whole make-believe. They got a whole make-believe doctrine. Marcion gave us a white Jesus, non-accredited. This ain't that. So if anything, I'm going to go to the people putting out this information, and I'm going to check this information. You got to cut it off from the root. So I'm not going to confuse this reading with these sources with that nonsense. It's different levels of nonsense. There's plenty nonsense in the church, but I don't want y'all to look at the nonsense and tell me that's Christianity. No, get away from Benny Hinn and that flying ass jacket. Get away from him. Let me start my cussing before they start. Benny Hinn is not biblical Christianity, flying jackets, and all this other stuff. Let me just tell y'all that right now. I'll play some Johnny Mack now. Johnny Mack, nobody gonna say Johnny. Well, too many people gonna say Johnny Mack is a devil and an occultist. Vince Bantu is a devil and an occultist. Tony Evans is a devil and an occultist. You got to go to mainstream. So he's dealing with mainstream. I was showing him some of the videos. Another guy said, "Now, when middle class America get a hold of doctrine," I said, "Well, who you think buying the books? Who you think the Negroes in jail without a father, without any commissary? You think they the ones reading his books? Come on, y'all got to stop this. Y'all got to stop this. We got to think, y'all. We got to think. I ain't even been to seminar. I got to come here and tell y'all what's going on here. I don't know. Sometimes going to school don't make you the sharpest. I ain't gonna say I ain't shooting down school, but sometimes that don't mean you sharp enough how to make moves or just give you wisdom in certain things. That's all it is, certain things. If this internet is moving like the block in the barbershop, it's a certain way you come in there.
Those asking about links, when you say you go to the video clips, the small video clips that I post, which are basically taken from the longer studies, if you go to the comments section or the description and click the link to the original full video, you can find the notes there. So once again, for those of you having trouble finding the notes and saying you can't find them, you don't see the sources, go to the original full video, click either the description or check the comments. I try to pin it in the comments, and I try to put a link to the
or because it's a cultural thing, the Christian church don't have to deal with it. Leave that to, hold on a minute. Leave that to Professor Henry and Dr. Brown and those that claim that they are Jews and may not be, according to some of y'all, and let them deal with it. Let them put that work in because it's a cultural thing and they making claims. But all I'm saying is, If they making claims that people came over here with slaves and they fulfilled curses and all of that stuff, and y'all didn't look into it, and then them other folk get to saying it, like Dr. Who's the other one was talking to Dr. Brown, talking about transatlantic slave through Ebu and all of that stuff. And the rabbis in Israel get to make the claims. What is it going to look like for Christianity in good America? Because y'all know once Israel get to making some claims, the world going to do what Israel say. What the black church going to do then? Don't make the white Jew come out and say it's legit that they were sold into slavery. I'm going to be embarrassed for y'all. I'm going to be embarrassed for you Christian folk. Oh, God won't let that happen. I know. God is on your side. I know. I understand. He won't let it happen.
To the notes pages in the description, but in either the comments or description, you will be able to find the notes. So when you see these smaller cut up videos, that's where you can find them at. All right. So now, Internet Jewish History Source Book, The Expulsion from Spain, 1492 CE or AD, if you prefer. Once again, this is coming from Fordham University. And so I'm going to read this. This isn't super long, but I believe it's going to give everybody a proper setup for what we're going to talk about today. Once again, the topic is the Black Portuguese and the transatlantic slave trade. Do me a favor and hit the 1 if you were aware that there were Black Portuguese Jews. Do me a favor and hit the 2 if you're not aware that there are Black Portuguese Jews. No shame in it. Everybody has to start from some point. This may be the first video you're watching. This may be the 1,001st video you're watching. So everybody starts at a different point. So
now the bad thing is where the pseudo come in. Y'all can say what y'all want. Dr. Ben that wrote We the Black Jews. Later on, Sinetta and them went to the funeral. And I love Ben and them, but I had to bring it up. Dr. Ben, Dr. Ben had honorary degrees. He never really degree. But how did Dr. Ben get to come to lecturing up in Cornell University? Y'all know Cornell is recognized among the folk. Among the folk, there's a place called Cornell, and it's recognized. Cornell University, y'all look it up. It's accredited. Oh, it's some smart folk come up out of there. And Dr. Ben got in there and he started talking Cornell, and he spoke on Portuguese Jews and all that other stuff. I ain't never heard my seminary friends talk about that. That's beef. So I've been familiar with, I heard that stuff. Is it pseudo? Is it not? Apparently he lied on his resume, but the school hired him. Then the whole Mary Lefkowitz thing and all that. Let y'all find out how all the stuff broke out. By the time it broke out, mad college kids, mad historical Black colleges, HBCUs and all that already got Dr. Ben Van Sertima. We was already out there. We was already traveling. The white folk done lied. It's in college campuses. Now it might be pseudos also on the block. It's in the barbershop. Sinetta before YouTube was already on the streets with the VHS tapes and everything. So it's on the block. It's all in the penitentiaries. But it ain't in the seminaries. So now we got people coming in contact with information, pastors and preachers coming in contact with information, stuff they might not have ever heard before.
Today we're going to talk about that history and how it ties into the transatlantic slave trade. Now, one of the arguments you will often hear when dealing with this information is that Black people are sub-Saharan African, and so therefore we cannot have any ties to the people of the Bible because we are sub-Saharan Africans. We were taken from West Africa, and therefore we are automatically sub-Saharan African. But the reality is, throughout history, people migrated. There was no magical boundary line that separated sub-Saharan Africa from Northern Africa. This is a myth. Check out Dr. Rebecca Futo Kennedy, and she will break it down for you. Check out Herodotus, and he talks about the Colchians being Egyptians that were living in Europe around the Caucasus Mountains. We've gone over that. We also know that during the transatlantic slave trade, there were not just sub-Saharan West Africans in the area. We know that there were Portuguese Jews in the area. We know that there were Portuguese settlements and forts in the area. We know that the English operated out of there. We know that Spain had some involvement. We we know that there's other
Yes.
ones that were
The
less
Warrior Degree,
prominent,
Cornell,
and I don't even want to get sidetracked into those, but there were other European countries there, not just England, but England was the most prominent, Portugal was the most prominent, and Spain were the most prominent in those areas. The Netherlands were there too, and some other people, but we're not going to get into those. So now we know that there are multiple groups in this area. So we have the native West Africans that are in this area. We have the Portuguese Jews who were banished into the area by the Portuguese who also settled the area. And then you're going to have the English playing around in the area. So we're going to have those four main people. The Spanish are going to play a role in this. But if you guys know about the Alhambra Agreement, you will note that the Spanish and Portuguese had split the world up into two parts, which is why you're going to have a lot of Spanish activity in North America, and you're going to have a lot of Portuguese activity down towards South America and Central America, which is why in Brazil, the main language is Portuguese, and why in certain parts of South America, the main language is Portuguese. And then when you read through U.S. history, you're going to see a lot of stuff going on with the Spanish, and England ends up winning out. So here we go. Hopefully I got that recap and update, and anybody that's new kind of has a brief background of what's going on. The area we're talking about is West Africa and Iberia, Spain, Portugal, that area. And we're going to end up touching on Morocco and some other stuff as we get through this. So finally, after 8 minutes, we're going to go ahead and jump into reading. All right, here we go. In the spring of 1492, shortly after the Moors were driven out of Granada, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain expelled all the Jews from their lands, and thus, by a stroke of the pen, put an end to the largest and most distinguished Jewish settlement in Europe. The expulsion of this intelligent, cultured, and industrious class was prompted only in part by the greed of the king and intensified nationalism of the people who had just brought the crusade against the Muslim Moors to a glorious close. The real motive was the religious zeal of the church, the queen, and the masses. The official reason given for driving out the Jews was that they encouraged the Marranos to persist in their Jewishness and thus would not allow them to become good Christians. All right, so it's setting it up. It's telling you the Crusades against the Muslims had just ended, and now they're turning their attention towards the Jews who encouraged the Marranos to persist in their Jewishness. If you guys want some good information on Marranos, check out Brother Benaiah Israel's channel. He has lots of good information on the Marranos. All right. The following account gives a detailed and accurate picture of the expulsion and its immediate consequences for Spanish Jewry. It was written in Hebrew by an Italian in April or May of 1495. All right, so this account claims to be an eyewitness account from 1495. This is during the period between 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue and 1497 when King Manuel is going to give his decree. So we're right in between that period. So 1495. And in the year 5252, this is the Jewish calendar year, or 1492, this is AD CE, in the days of King Ferdinand, the Lord visited the remnant of his people a second time. The first Spanish visitation was in 1391 and exiled them. After the king had captured the city of Granada from the Moors, and it had surrendered to him on the 7th or 2D of January, 2nd day of January of the year just mentioned, he ordered the expulsion of all the Jews in all parts of his kingdoms of Castile, Catalonia, Aragon, Galicia, Majorca, Minorca, the Basque provinces, the islands of Sardinia and Sicily, and the kingdom of Valencia. Even before that, the queen had expelled them from the kingdom of Andalusia in 1483. So now all the Jews are being expelled, second day of January, 1492. So the king gave them 3 months' time in which to leave. It was announced in public in every city on the 1st of May, which happened to be the 19th day of the Omer. and the term ended on the day before the 9th of Ab, or Av to some people. The 49 days between the second Passover and Shabbat, or Shabbut, y'all know I'm terrible at pronouncing other languages, are called Omer days. The actual decree of expulsion was signed March 31st and announced the 1st of May, the 19th day of the Omer. The Jews were to leave during the May, June, and May, June, and July, and be out of the country August 1st, the 8th of Ab. About their number, there is no agreement, but after many inquiries, I found that the most generally accepted estimate is 50,000 families, or as others say, 53,000. This would be about 250,000 persons, so 250,000 people. Other estimates run from 100,000 to 800,000. So somewhere between 100,000 and 800,000, but they estimate about 250,000 people. But they're all in agreement that it's between 50,000 and 53,000 families.
Okay, how many 253,000 families the average family would have? What do you think? Four mother, father, and 2 kids? I'm just trying to think. They ain't got to West Africa yet, but I'm trying to think. And it could have been that much longer for families to multiply. How many people in the how long was the slave trade, and how many people they said came over? 12, 15 million? Dr. Bennett them said 100 million. Well, who was all lost in the ocean and all that other stuff. But the average number we hear is 12 million that came over.
Family size will vary. They had houses, fields, vineyards, and cattle, and most of them were artisans. At that time, there existed many Talmudic At that time, there existed many Talmudic academies in Spain, and at the head of the greatest of them were Rabbi Isaac Aboab and Guadalajara, probably the greatest Spanish rabbi of his day, Rabbi Isaac Vicudo in Leon, and Rabbi Jacob Habib in Salamanca, later author of a famous collection of non-legal parts of the Talmud, the In Yaakov. In the last named city, there was a great expert in mathematics, and whenever there was any doubt on mathematical questions in the Christian academy of that city, they referred them to him. His name was Abraham Zacuto. This famous astronomer encouraged the expedition of Vasco da Gama. If you guys don't know much about Abraham Zacuto, do some research on him. Now, here's where it starts to get more interesting. In the course of the three...
And then I would be Googling Rabbi Isaac and all of them from the 1400s, and I would be doing some stuff, but I ain't.
3 months, respite was granted them. They endeavored to effect an arrangement permitting them to stay on in the country, and they felt confident of success. Their representatives were Rabbi Don Abraham Sr., the leader of the Spanish congregations, who was attended by a retinue of 30 mules, and Rabbi Meir Melamed, who was a secretary to the king, and Don Isaac Abram.
Now, were those rabbis black? That's the first thing I would be thinking. Let's keep going, though.
Now, who had fled to Castile from the king of Portugal, and then occupied an equally prominent position at the Spanish royal court. He too was later expelled, went to Naples, and was highly esteemed by the king of Naples. The aforementioned great Rabbi Isaac Leon used to call this Don Senor, or sunny, or hater of light, a Hebrew pun on Senor, because he was a heretic, and the end proved that he was right, as he was converted to Christianity at the age of 80. He and all his family, and Rabbi Meir Melamed with him. Senor and his son-in-law Meir were converted June 15th, 1492. Ferdinand and Isabella were among the sponsors. Don Abraham had arranged the nuptials between the king and the queen. The queen was the heiress to the throne, and the king one of the Spanish nobility. On account of this, Don Abraham was appointed leader of the Jews, but not with their consent. All right, so we see what's going on here. This 80-year-old rabbi has converted to Christianity with the blessing of the king and the queen. The king is one of the nobles. The queen is the actual heir to the throne. All right. It says, the agreement permitting them to remain in the country on the payment of a large sum of money was almost completed when it was frustrated by the interference of a prior who was called the Prior of Santa Cruz. Legend relates to Torquemada, prior of the Covenant of Santa Cruz, thundered with crucifix aloft to the king and queen. Judas Iscariot sold his master for 30 pieces of silver. Your Highness would sell him anew for 30,000. Here he is. Take him and barter him away. Then the queen gave an answer to the representatives of the Jews, similar to the saying of King Solomon from Proverbs 2, that's 21:1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of the water. God turneth it whithersoever he will. She said, furthermore, do you believe that this comes upon you from us? The Lord has put this thing into the heart of the king. Isabella says it is God's will that the Jews be expelled. Now that's interesting because we talk about the curses of Deuteronomy 28 and how the Israelites would flee from country to country. The
finances with the QuickBooks mobile app.
Curses would follow them. And here we have a queen. We look at this situation as crazy. Nobody thinks that I'm not going to say nobody. Most people don't think that the Inquisition was a good thing. But here we have a queen saying, this is God's will that we expel you. Now, with that in mind, where they end up from here is what leads to the transatlantic slave trade. So if you believe the transatlantic slave trade is Bible prophecy, there had to be preceding events to get to that point in history. So do me a one. If you think it's a possibility that the queen could be telling the truth, that it's God's will that they were expelled from Spain and Portugal, press 1. If you don't believe it's a possibility, press 2. It's just an opinion. If you believe that she may have been telling the truth, that it was God's will, or she wasn't, I guess we shall see. Then they saw that there was evil determined against them by the king, and they gave up the hope of remaining. But the time had become short, and they had to hasten their exodus from Spain. They sold their houses, their landed estates, and their cattle for very small prices to save themselves. The king did not allow them to carry silver and gold out of his country, so that they were compelled to exchange their silver and gold for merchandise of cloths and skins and other things. Ever since 1480, Jews and Gentiles were forbidden to export precious metal, the source of the nation's wealth. So basically, they traded lands for clothes and food. They didn't get actual money. So now, understand, they were stripped of actual wealth that could be used in other places. And so now they only had things that could sustain them once they fled. 120,000 of them went to Portugal, according to a compact which
that's where you see this. You see what the statement right here? That's where the beef was with Garfield. I can't even remember who all was on the panel, but that's where the beef was right here. John is saying none of them was at the bottom of the ship. Did they reading some Jew stuff, but these were the ones running the ships?
Prominent man, Don Vidal Bar Benevisti del Cavalaria, had made with the king of Portugal, and they paid.
So, John, you believe they got the history right, but the people wrong. This is stolen history. They're using the evidence of the light-skinned Jew, some who were down with the slave trade, and mixing it up for themselves, and these really the people on the top.
1 ducat for every soul. So it was 120,000 of them. They paid 1 ducat. So that's 120,000 ducats. I don't know what that, I didn't do any of the conversion math on that to see what it amounts to in US dollars at this time. If you guys want to chase that down, please feel free to share. And the 4th part of all the merchandise they had carried thither. So they paid 1 ducat each and 1/4 of all their belongings. and he allowed them to stay in his country 6 months. This king acted much worse toward them than the king of Spain. And after the 6 months had elapsed, he made slaves.
So they were ran out from Spain, right across that, what they call that famous rock and all that down there. And they went right on over there to Portugal, right? The guy in Portugal let the Jews stay there. Jews apparently had money because they were doing some trading or whatever. And y'all say these the black Jews, and they got ran out. They had to pay pennies on a dollar. They had to get a jury up and everything. Those that own jewelry stores and businesses and trading and into Rolex watches, and like they are in the Diamond District right now. Because those people in the Diamond District and where they digging them tunnels in Eastern Parkway, they say they was the ones that was ran all out of Europe, having jewelry stores and pawn shops and always getting money in the church, hate them, and they borrowed money from them and robbed them and terrorized them. Same thing they did with the Knights Templar. When the king got broke, they borrowed money. Then when they want to get rid of, they just got rid of folk and just that. Them light-skinned folks say this day history. But listen to what happens when they get to Portugal. The king treated them even worse after 6 months and flipped on them and brought them into slavery. This is a key part here. If this white folks saying this, if those sources saying that and not black Israelites, we'll see.
Of all those that remained in his country. So now, right here, they are already being put into slavery. I want to make this very clear. The king of Portugal started putting these exiled Jews or Israelites into slavery. This is before the transatlantic slave trade. This is leading up to the transatlantic slave trade. Now, we've heard people say ridiculous things like the Jews they weren't on board the slave ships. They were hitchhiking on the slave ships. They were catching rides on these slave ships. They owned these slave ships. This is what we have heard. We've heard all these scenarios. However, two things can be true at one time. You could have some converted Jews who may have owned slave ships that also put actual descendants of Israelites on those slave ships.
So
but we see right here
converts
that they're already being put.
So what you hear, Fervent Charity, that the converts flipped on the original Jews and brought them into slavery? That's what you just heard? Y'all don't like the converts anyway. Y'all want to be the original.
On slave ships. All right. So I'll read this again. The king acted much worse toward them than the king. This king acted much worse toward them than the king of Spain. And after 6 months had elapsed, he made slaves of all those that remained in his country and banished 700 children to a remote island to settle it, and all of them died. This is talking about Sao Tome. We're going to come back to Sao Tome. All these children did not die. They were left to die. And we see this in other sources. I'm not going to get into those sources right now because of the sidetrack from the main point, but they were left there to die. But the other sources say that they did not die. All right. Let's see. All of them died. Some say that there were double as many. So 1,400, possibly. Upon them, the scriptural word was fulfilled. Deuteronomy 28:32. Interesting right there. It mentions Deuteronomy 28:32. But we've been told that seeing Deuteronomy 28 is something that Black Hebrew Israelites made up. And I've also showed you guys sources before that showed in the 1600s there were white Europeans that believed Deuteronomy 28 was prophecy. So people believe that what's happening right now in the context of this time period, not current time period, but what I'm reading about, people believed that this was a fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28. I'll say it one more time. People thought it was a fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28. At no point that we've seen in history did people think Deuteronomy 28 was anything other than a Bible prophecy. And yet you have people in the modern church telling you that Deuteronomy 28 is not a Bible prophecy. And we're showing that in 1495, which is, again, this is when this account is supposed to be from, in 1495, they believed Deuteronomy 28 was Bible prophecy. So anybody telling you that this is Black Hebrew Israelite doctrine concerning Deuteronomy 28, they're ignorant of history And like I started out saying, most people don't know as much about history as they think they know. Not even their own church history, not even their own doctrines. They don't know as much as they think they know. So upon them, the scriptural word was fulfilled. Deuteronomy 28:32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, etc. All Spanish Jews who were still in Portugal in 1493 were enslaved by King John. One more time. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given to another people. All Spanish Jews who were still in Portugal in 1493 were enslaved by King John. He reigned from 1481 to 1495. The children were sent to the Isle of St. Thomas, or Sao Tome, off the coast of Africa. So now, 1493, they were turned into slaves, and the children were sent to Africa, West Africa. Now, 1493. If you believe that the transatlantic slave trade officially starts in America 1619, we know the transatlantic slave trade started shortly before then, but the 1619 date is recognized by Congress, U.S. Congress. So when people ask the foolish question, why 1619? It's the date that has historically been taught. It's the date that has been historically recognized by multiple governments all over the world. That's why that date has significance, because it's the accepted date. Now you can play the nuances with all the other stuff you want to, but we're talking about verifiable facts that people accept. So now people accept that it was 1619. So this is roughly what, 226 years prior? Y'all do the math on that. That might be off a little bit. 100, maybe 126 years. Either way it go. Y'all do the math on that. But the fact is 1493 is when they started enslaving these exiled Jews or Israelites. And then 1619 is when they officially say that the transatlantic slave trade in America began. So it says, the children were sent to the island of St. Thomas off the coast of Africa. He also ordered the congregation of Lisbon, this is in Portugal, his capital, not to raise their voice in their prayers, that the Lord might not hear their complaining about the violence that was done unto them. They didn't want God to hear what was going on.
Listen.
Now, again, this ain't Israelite doctrine. I'm reading this off of the Fordham University website. So we've talked about Kumbaya, arise, Father God. They didn't want them crying out. We know when the Black Panthers got stopped and J. Edgar Hoover said they wanted to prevent the rise of the Black Messiah, they want Black people just to shut up. But again, some people don't believe these people were Black, but we're going to continue. And then we're going to look at some corroborating information. Many of the exiled Spaniards went to Mohammedan countries, to Fez, Tlemcen, and the Berber provinces under the king of Tunis. So now you guys have heard me say before, there becomes some blurred lines between the Moors and the Israelites and some other groups in history. You're going to start to see why. There were all kind of things going on. The Europeans were at war with everybody, and sometimes people were pretending to be other people, and they were moving around to avoid things. They were changing names and locations and all kind of stuff. Let me see here. It says these North African lands are across the Mediterranean from Spain. One of those countries is going to include Morocco, which is going to come on account of their large.
All right, I'm going back and looking at the comments right now. Why them folk, they raided T.D. Jakes' house, or them folk online lying? They lie. They can't help themselves but spread lies and nonsense, fake news. Fair use.
Large numbers. The Moors did not allow them into their cities, and many of them died in the fields from hunger, thirst, and lack of everything. So now, the Moors are not.
Edith said the time itself lead me to say it's all wrong. No, he's leading up to something. I think he's leading up to something. I didn't have time to say it. We're just gonna let it play because folks act like I ain't trying to suppress Jack. Fair use.
Not allowing them in. So the Moors and the Jews are going to, or the Israelites are going to be separate for a time, because later on you're going to see some stuff happening not in this study. I mentioned it before. I mentioned it before about the tribe who, when they found a Moor, they would skin them alive. It was an Israelite tribe because they were at war. But sometimes the Israelites would escape by pretending to be Moors, and sometimes the Moors would pretend to be Israelites. I'm telling you, it's a lot of stuff that happens in history. I'm not saying this happened at mass. I'm saying there are accounts of these things happening, one-offs, the minority. All right. On account of their large numbers, the Moors did not allow them into their cities, and many of them died in the fields from hunger, thirst, and lack of everything. The lions and bears, which are numerous in this country, killed some of them while they lay starving outside of the cities. A Jew in the kingdom of Tlemcen named Abraham, the victory who ruled the kingdom, made part of them come to his kingdom, and he spent a large amount of money to help them. The Jews of northern Africa were very charitable toward them. A part of those who went to northern Africa, as they found no rest and no place that would receive them, returned to Spain and became converts or new Christians. And through them, the prophecy of Jeremiah was fulfilled. Lamentations 1:13. He has spread a net.
Especially the part coming up. Leo, if you want to come on at least to bump that Deuteronomy 28 part or challenge, that'll put the pushback, however y'all young folk want to say to it. I just put the link out there.
For my feet, he hath turned me back. For originally they had all fled for the sake of the unity of God. Only a very few had become converts throughout all the boundaries of Spain. They did not spare their fortunes. Yea, parents escaped without having regard to their children. So some of the parents escaped and left the children behind, or may just not have, cared what happened to their children. When the edict of expulsion became known in the other countries, vessels came from Genoa to the Spanish harbors to carry away the Jews. So wait, they're starting to have vessels? What kind of vessels? Maybe land ships, maybe sea ships? I don't know.
You hear that, Leo, that Deuteronomy 28 is perpetual? It could be happening.
The crews of these vessels,
but it's connected specifically. You coming back to Egypt, to a land, and Egypt is America, and house of bondage, and all of that. It's connected. Y'all say perpetual, but it's connected specifically with the 400 years and some stuff that y'all are telling us, especially in light of, we're looking at scriptures and say, well, Stephen understood the 400 years to be this with Abraham and that, and y'all argue about 30 years, and the other guys want to get it from the Septuagint. I don't know. I'm just here for the comments.
Acted maliciously and meanly.
And you don't even have to believe in the 400 years, because I don't think Ella Green believe in that. You don't have to believe in the 400 years to be Israel. There's a good bit of Israel people out here that don't believe in the 400 years, and they still think they're Israel.
Toward the Jews, robbed them, and delivered some of them to the famous pirate of the time who was called.
Or fervent charity. Some people in the church, their attitude is this is just one big conspiracy nonsense. Now, I got two things to say to that. We've had conspiracies that later on came out to be true. How many of y'all people, type of one if you think the government's 30 years ahead of us, before they put satellites out and GPS in the cars and all of that they already had satellites. And don't start debating me as satellites, and there's no satellites working with the phone. They're really underground on fiber optic cable. We can beef about that later on. Just follow me, please.
The Corsair of Genoa. To those who escaped and arrived at Genoa, the people of the city showed themselves merciless. And
even if it's a conspiracy and it's a trick of the enemy, should we deal with those that's attempting to deceive people into thinking that they're Israelites? Should this be exposed, even if it's a big deception?
And oppressed and robbed them and cruel.
Or do you think if these people have a history of whitewashing, a history of lying, a history of making people, don't give me Deuteronomy 8, Psalms 83 right now. Don't even give me that Psalms 83 right now, conspiracy and all of that stuff. Or do you think because these people have a history of lying, of course they lie about this, they whitewashed before, and we got leaders in Christianity. Christians are forced to admit, if they don't want to say there's been a whitewashing, they've been living in delusion. or they just want to be denial and act, and they sick in their head. We got to call it for what it is. You can't even come to the conversation. You can't come to the cipher if you're going to even deny whitewashing. Tim came in here and told y'all Jesus and them was white, and the apostles and them was white. Red letter, would you still love him? Jay Jackson, I'm worried about, would you still love him?
Cruelty and the cruelty of their wicked hearts went so far that they took the infants from the mother's breast. So they were taking kids away from the mothers after they've been exiled. Show me a people in history who this has happened to. You have two groups of people who claim this history. You have the Jews who do not look like us. Let's call them the Israelis. They claim that this happened to them, and we know it happened to the descendants of slaves all over the world. We know this to be true.
Now, if the Bible said they're going to be carried captive, this is where you church folk don't want no beef with them light-skinned folk over there in that land. Y'all rather keep your mouth shut. If you want to keep your church and your 50, 60, 80 members, you want to keep your mouth shut and stay out them folk business unless you're going to support them and send money. I'm just messing with y'all. Y'all ain't scared of them. But if it talks about captivity, are these people false in making these prophecies slavery and spinning a narrative, then saying who it look like it fulfills, the small hat people or our descendants? Where Leo at? Because if they spinning it and it ain't really captivity and bonds and chains, or so real and them will get to coming in here and saying they went into Egypt, and y'all see what Josephus said, and y'all missed all of that. Y'all making it some 1,500 years later, and it happened 40 years after Christ.
So only one of these two groups of people can claim that this is a fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28. But let's just keep going and see who this may apply to.
Listen.
I'm not saying either group is right or wrong. I'm just saying only two groups of people in history try to make a claim on this particular history. But we see what area in the world this is happening. They have now fled from Spain to Portugal, and now they have been forced over into North Africa, into Morocco and those other areas in North Africa. Many ships with Jews, especially from Sicily, went to the city of Naples on the coast. The king of this country was friendly to the Jews, received them all, and was merciful towards them, and he helped them with money. The Jews that were at Naples supplied them with food as much as they could and sent around the other parts of Italy to collect money to sustain them. The Marranos in the city lent them money on pledges without interest. Even the Dominican Brotherhood acted mercifully toward them. The Dominican monks were normally bitterly opposed to Jews. On account of their very large number, all this was not enough. Some of them died by famine. Others sold their children to Christians to sustain their life. Finally, a plague broke out among them, spread to Naples, and very many of them died, so that the living wearied of burying the dead. Part of the exiled Spaniards went overseas to Turkey. Some of them were thrown into the sea and drowned, but those who arrived there, the king of Turkey received kindly, as they were artisans. He lent them money and settled many of them on an island and gave them fields and estates. The Turks needed smiths and makers of munitions for war against Christian Europe. Now, the Turks. Now, I'm no expert, but don't the Turks and the Khazars have something to do with each other? I don't know. Do me a favor, press 1 if you remember anything about the Turks and the Khazars being mentioned with each other, and give me a 2 if you don't remember. Now, I've been doing a study on the Khazars, which I'm not done yet. I've done parts 1, 2, and 3. And people have claimed that they've done testing and say that the Ashkenazi are not related to the Khazars, and the Khazars were a Turkic people, a Turkish people. All I'm saying is there seems to be a lot of Jews coming in contact with these Turkish people who are somehow linked to the Khazarians. And I read from you the Khazuri, where they said they were definitely Japheth and they were converts. And then we have this other group of people who are linked to them, possibly saying that they aren't really converts, but they're the real deal. But I'm going to keep reading. let's see. A few of the exiles were dispersed in the countries of Italy, in the city of Ferrara, in the papal countries of Romagna and March and Patrimonium, and in Rome. He who said unto his world, enough, may he also say enough unto our sufferings, and may he look down upon our impotence. May he turn again and have compassion upon us and hasten out salvation. Thus may it be thy will. All right, so now you have a little bit of background on what was going on and how these Jews ended up in Africa. So for those of you who have been following the Khazar study, we know that Nebuchadnezzar had banished the Jews into Spain around 586 BC, roughly. So they've been in Spain since roughly 586 BC. They have now, fast forwarded, they are expelled from Spain and Portugal, and some of them end up in slavery in Portugal. The kids end up in Africa, Sao Tome, which is West Africa. I'm going to show you guys a map in a minute. And matter of fact, I'll show it right now. So the kids end up here between 700 and some people say double 1400 ended up here in West Africa. This is Spain, Iberia area up over here. This is Italy right here. So you have the Iberian Peninsula, which is going to be Spain, roughish area, and then Portugal over this way. And then they fled over this way, which is going to be North Africa. These parts up in here are going to be considered North Africa, which includes Egypt, Morocco, and a few other countries, Libya, and some others. So below this is you're going to have sub-Saharan Africa. And then for some reason, South Africa is considered separate from sub-Saharan Africa. So now you have the general makeup of the world. Now, one more time, you had Jews here or Israelites here who got chased into North Africa, and the kids were deported into West Africa. So between West Africa here and North Africa here, you're going to have all this land here, Mali, and some of the other places that are going to pop up, Senegambia and others. And you're going to have Jewish activity all in this area prior to this transatlantic slave trade. So when people try to tell you, no, you're sub-Saharan African, so you can't possibly have any link to these people, once again, they don't know as much about history as they think they know. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you share the video. All right, so now we're going to jump over to the Portuguese in West Africa, 1415 to 1670. Now, remember, the transatlantic slave trade is believed to have begun, is accepted to have begun in 1619. Now, who we have here? We have Cambridge University, publisher, Cambridge University Press. Interesting. I told you guys Cambridge University comes up a lot here. So now, the Portuguese in West Africa, 1450 to 1670, the documentary history, 2010. This is not a student paper. This is actually published by Cambridge University. Now, if you guys don't understand the how hard it is to get Cambridge to publish something, please go look up Cambridge's publishing standards and read through those publishing standards. Before they publish anything, it has to go through a process. So now, the Portuguese in West Africa was at 1415 to 1670. I'm only going to read this section here. This is starting from page 65, the bottom page 65 to 66. Now, remember, some of these people converted. Those are the new Christians. They have converted. And remember, they thought the kids died in Sao Tome. And I told you other sources say they didn't. So I'm going to read this right here. From Lorenzo Tramajo to Cardinal Francesco Barberini, Lisbon, this is in Portugal, 14th of February, 1632. So this is what, 13 years after the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. It says, after the expulsion of the Jews from Portugal in 1495, which is what we just covered, and the continued persecution of new Christians, those are the converts, the conversos, the new Christians, which culminated in the Lisbon massacres of 1506. We'll read about that in a minute from Hannah Adams. which she wrote in 1818 about this, many Jews and new Christians left for Morocco. This is going to be important. All right, one more time. After the expulsion of Jews from Portugal in 1495 and the continued persecution of new Christians, which culminated in the Lisbon massacres of 1506, many Jews and new Christians left for Morocco and also for West Africa. One more time. After the expulsion of Jews from Portugal in 1495 and the continued persecution of new Christians, which culminated in the Lisbon massacres of 1506, many Jews and new Christians left for Morocco and also for West Africa. In the West African trading stations, Jewish rites could be practiced with little disturbance from the ecclesiastical authorities. By the early 17th century, the 1600s, new Christian influence in Western Africa was widespread and flourished alongside other kinds of religious heterodoxy. This is right before the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. If they say that the transatlantic slave trade started in 1619, this document right here, which is published by Cambridge University in 2010, Cambridge University Press, is saying that in the early 17th century or 1600s, new Christian influence, that's converted Jews, in West Africa was widespread and flourished alongside other kinds of religious heterodoxy. The Sao Tome Islanders acquired early on the reputation of being strongly influenced by Jewish practices. We're going to read the rest of this right here. This may have had its origins in the story that large numbers of Jewish children who had been taken away from their parents were among the settlers who were sent to Sao Tome in the late 15th century or the late 1400s, 1495, that time period we just read about. Now, remember, the first one came from Fordham University. This is from Cambridge University, but it was certainly encouraged by the heavy mortality among priests and governors sent from Portugal, who it was only too easy to believe had been poisoned. In 1621, 2 years after the transatlantic slave trade started here in America, one bishop even fled the island, claiming that Judaism was so rampant that he had seen a secret nighttime procession carrying a golden calf, a reference to what was happening with Aaron and Moses on the mountain. He was saying Sao Tome in West Africa was so overrun with Judaism in 1621, 2 years after the transatlantic slave trade started here in the United States, the official date that's accepted. 2 years after that, he's saying Sao Tome, West Africa was overrun by Judaism. Now, remember, these are the same Jews believed to have been deported from Portugal, the children that were believed to have been deported, and some of them believed they had died, and some said, no, they're not dead. And they started sending Portuguese priests and governors down there, and they started getting poisoned or turning up dead. At a deeper level, these accusations of Judaizing, some of y'all are familiar with that word. We hear that word a lot of time from people who call themselves Christians. These accusations of Judaizing probably reflect the metropolitan frustration at the long-established opposition of the islanders to any form of control from Lisbon or Portugal. Now, I'm going to read this part right here. We're going to start corroborating some more stuff. This week, a canon and 2 secular priests from Sao Tome have arrived from Holland, having been taken by the Dutch after the capture of their ship. The bishop of Sao Tome, a Dominican, died 2 years ago. He was poisoned by some new Christians or conversos or Jews that had converted to Christianity. Among them, ecclesiastics as well as laymen against whom he had held an inquest and had produced the deposition of witnesses. So the Inquisition. So the Inquisition was being carried on in West Africa. Now, this is important because some people like to separate the Inquisition from the transatlantic slave trade. They are not separate events. They are one and the same. They overlap. People say, well, these have nothing to do with each other. But look at the areas we're talking about. We're talking about 2 years into the transatlantic slave trade. West Africa in Sao Tome is overrun with Judaism, according to this document. So let me ask you now, does anybody know of any reports right now in 2024 of Sao Tome, West Africa being overrun with Judaism? Press 1 if you've heard of that here now in 2024 as it being a current thing. Press 2 if you do not know of that being a current thing right now in Sao Tome. But here we are in 1621. Let me see. The canon says that the island is so infested with new Christians that Jewish practices are carried on almost openly. They have poisoned the bishops and governors who try to punish them. It is requested that new Christians should no longer receive benefits and canonries, and that the capitular vicar or vicar, who they say is of the race of that race, and one of those principally guilty of the poisoning, should be removed from his office. This should be done if he is found guilty. So they're saying it's a Jewish vicar in place or vicar in place, and he is one of the ones responsible for the poisoning of these people from Lisbon, these priests from Lisbon who have been sent down there to get a control or a handle on these Jews in West Africa. Now, the timeline is important. So in the 1400s or late 15th century, they get deported out of here over into here. Some of them flee down into here. Now we have an account saying that over here in West Africa, this island right here has been overrun with Judaism 2 years into the official date, 1619. That's accepted as the start of the American leg of the transatlantic slave trade.
Seeking a secure investment? Gold and silver offer a safe haven. Go to bgasc.com, the #1 resource.
Now, this is going to bring us over to Blacks, Jews, the Religious Challenge by Cambridge University. Let me see what page this is, 232. So yeah, Blacks, Jews, let me go back to the top. The Religious Challenge, another Cambridge University press. Interesting, this is published in 1987 right here. So the other one I just read is from 2010. This is from 1987. So clearly, Cambridge University is being consistent based on what I'm about to read. Some of you have seen this before. Some of you have not. So let me get back to page 232. All right, here we go. So now I'm going to read this part right here. These couple paragraphs. I'm not going to read all of this. I'm just going to read these right here. This one and this one.
Now, remember, it could be said that many people like involved in apologetics might say he don't know nobody's apologist that's into dispensationalism. So people can say it doesn't make any difference if you're bringing out historical facts and that people came over here on the transatlantic slave trade were Israelites. We've heard Lisa Fields, we've heard Dr. Vince Bantu saying, okay, of some people that came over here, not giving a number, but nobody definitely saying not everybody that came over were Israelites. But they're saying what difference it makes if they evolved in supersessionism and they believe that the church in Israel is one people. Who's the true seed of Abraham according to Romans? Those that believe they're the true spiritual seed of Abraham. Y'all say, well, show me spiritual Israel in the Bible, and y'all will start that stuff. But if Israel is the church, Jew and Gentile alike, one new man, they could say, well, what's the difference with going through all of this stuff? And that's an easy way to say, nobody have to run down something if you don't really believe in that. Fair use. Most likely what people would say. So it don't make a difference if you thought you're Ham, you thought you're Shem. Once you're in Christ, that's it. Don't make a difference.
But what about the south of this margin of Sahara?
Now somebody gonna say, well, it make a difference if America is giving money to Israel and those people not. That y'all just leave the church folk alone right now.
Saharan contacts. In the reign of John II of Portugal, nearly 700 Jews were taken from their kin and deported to the island of Sao Tome on the west coast of Africa. All right, so we know they're talking about the same period of time because this is the second time we've seen King John of Portugal mentioned. We've seen the number 700 mentioned. We've seen Sao Tome mentioned. We've seen West Africa mentioned. It says this island is close to Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. Nigeria is where you're going to find the Igbo, and you're going to have some other groups in Cameroon and Gabon. So I focused a lot on Nigeria and Igbo because I am 48% Igbo. Go watch my DNA journey videos. It's just part of my personal DNA makeup. And so I tend to focus more on Igbo. You will find other people who focus more on Yoruba. And I am going to cover the Yoruba and some of the other groups. I've covered the Ashanti, very little bit of the Ashanti as well. But it's giving you the groups over here, or the areas that these people are close to. It says this island is close to Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. So one more time, talking about this island right here, Sao Tome and Principe over here too. So let's keep reading.
Now this is the thing. When Judith and when Michi the Judite, and when y'all start this nonsense, and Bruce, oh, America know the truth. The Illuminati, the government know the truth. They know who we are. I don't know where y'all get that from. From these readings, they knew who they brought. Oh, y'all got to believe that everybody that came over. Nah, I'm good. I don't know, but I don't know. I'm gonna leave it alone. Oh, they know the truth. They're deceiving.
Let's see. Escaping from Sao Tome. So we know that it was overrun with Judaism. Now this Cambridge University is talking about they escaped from Sao Tome. Escaping from Sao Tome, the Jews immigrated to the coast of Angola between 1484 and 1499. So roughly about 120 years.
Because long time ago, some church folk I know, they said, y'all made the claim, y'all go ahead and show and prove it. Then they went black.
Before the official start of the transatlantic slave trade, according to what's accepted for the American leg of it. And I'm being very specific with that for a reason, because a lot of people don't agree that it started in 1619. And that's why a lot of people separate the Inquisition from the transatlantic slave trade, but you can't do that because in 1834, which we're not going to cover here, England does something, which is they end the slave trade, but at the same time England ends the slave trade, they end the Inquisition. Most people don't know that. Again, 1834, go look it up. I'm going to cover it in a different video, not in this video, but I'm going to cover it in a different video. In 1834, the same year that England ends the transatlantic slave trade on their end, they also end the Inquisition.
Now, J. Jack's a lie right here. Nobody has said everyone, but the majority, yes. See, that's where the beef begins. That's where the beef is. Nobody said, the camps say everyone. If you part of Deuteronomy, the camps believe everybody black over here. The Jews were targeted. This is the main thing. Listen to what she's saying. The Jews, specifically the black Jews, were targeted because it was an extension of the Inquisition. Now, if that's true, that's beef. A large bit of people over here are Israel. Yeah, like the church people say, according to the Bible, you're not dispensationalists. It doesn't make a difference. I don't know. I'm gonna let it play. She's not even saying a few. She's saying a large, like most of the people came over here were Israel, and some West Africans stuck up all in between
there as well. So, same year. All right. I'm gonna keep reading. I'm not gonna stop this time. Well, I am going to stop here and there, but you know. All right. This island is close to Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. Escaping from Sao Tome, the Jews immigrated to.
Leo's asking a fair question, J. Jax. Are there any primary? Well, that's what he's showing you from the time right now. He's walking you through it. He would say that. Leo's saying, are there any primary sources from the slave record? Oh, from the slave records itself, proving the targeting? J. Jax. He's about to read. Oh, that's JT Mack. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay, we are all right now. Well, Leo, he's trying to walk through the steps.
To the coast of Angola between 1484 and 1499. They must have settled in several Portuguese colonies and over the centuries mixed with the indigenous Black population. So what did they settle into? Portuguese colonies and mixed with the indigenous Black population. This is consistent with what we saw in the Khazar study, where the tribe of Manasseh was mixing in with the Black Khazars. And this is consistent with what we see in the Bible, where they mix with Hamites. All consistent. Near the Congo in Gabon in 1776, Black Jews called Bavumbu or even Mavambo or Mayambo, May or Mavumbu lived on the coast of Luango by the river named Rio Muni. It would seem that they had adopted Christianity at the same time as maintaining their Judaism, or new Christians or conversos. These are talking about the same people. By 1847, David Livingstone discovered a group of educated Blacks living in the interior some 200 miles from the coast of Luando. So this is over 200 years, 28 years into the transatlantic slave trade. This is where we are now. At this point, 1847, these Blacks were called the Jews of Angola. They were good merchants, learned easily, and had a knowledge of Portuguese law and history. They were often employed as clerks and writers. For Livingstone, there was no doubt but that these people were the descendants of those who had been deported from Portugal in the 15th century. So 200 years into the transatlantic slave trade, you have people being identified as the descendants of those deported into West Africa at the end of the 15th century, which is in the 1490s. We were talking about 1492, 1495, that time period. So we know that they were all over West Africa, according to Cambridge University. Other evidence supports his intuition. In Savage Africa, Winwood Reade writes of having met in Guinea Blacks claiming to be Portuguese around 1864. So this isn't new stuff. It's not Black Hebrew Israelite doctrine. We didn't make it up. You see, it's coming from Cambridge and Fordham University. Closer to our time, Dr. J. Kreppel noted sometime after the First World War that a large community of Black Jews existed in the interior of Dahomey. What is Dahomey? It is modern day Benin and Togo. What was it before that? It was the Kingdom of Judah, or Widdah, which we'll come back to. These Jews had the 5 books of Moses written on old parchment in Hebrew. All these disparate elements are evidence of the permanent presence of a Jewish tradition within African ethnic groups which had at one time been in contact with the Jews who came from the Mediterranean, were converted, and had kept their faith and their way of life. Now, the interesting thing is, in 1987, Cambridge, the author of this, Ulysses S. Santa Maria, he assumed that these were converts, when in reality, what we're seeing is that they were the originals that converted to Christianity and then maintained their Judaism while at the same time being new Christians. And people assume that these are converts. But as you guys have seen in my many videos, there were lots of migrations of Jews or Israelites into West Africa. So now, let's move on. Because see, it's one thing to, talk about these people being taken to West Africa and there being a slave trade, and you have people who try to run interference on the history because for whatever reason they've made up their mind that no matter what, it can't possibly be you guys, so we have to disprove it. That's an ignorant way to approach history, trying to disprove or debunk something you haven't even studied yet because you don't like the idea or the implications of it.
What do you say about that right there, Leo? Just that statement right there.
I told you guys, I took that ignorant approach by trying to debunk this information and approach it as Black people are from Ham. I can prove we're from Ham, and the real Israelites, they're from Shem and they're Middle Eastern and they look Middle Eastern and we know who they are.
Now, and that's me. So he said he started off with believing what I basically believe. He started like many people basically believe. Not everybody, everybody in church ain't Ham, but we were definitely on some Ham. We original Cushites and Judah, but we were saying we Judah. Bishop McKinley, Roy Brown, that whole movement, everybody in the whole New York City, and then they started spreading out. They said we definitely Judah, because Judah means praise. We wasn't looking at it physically. Physically, we Hamites descended from Cush, that built great nations and all of that stuff. But we Judah, we redeemed in Christ, and that's what they were saying. So he said he started off them same lines and seeking out to disprove something that Telu and them said. He been on the channel and testified, seeking to disprove something that Telu and them, his man and them said, and come to find out it was some other stuff.
That was my.
So I think that's all he trying to do. Challenge folk. You could be thinking it's one thing, and you get out there and look. It's been some twisting up, and it's some original, some older sources. It's some people, and basically according to what some of these universities saying, and some of these old books are saying, from the time that they knew them people was Jews, Israel, or whatever. Excuse me, and that's the beef.
Ignorant approach, and so you will still hear people out here with this ignorant approach. And they have decided, well, that can't possibly be true, so I'm going to try to debunk it. And any information that comes,
I don't think anybody can say, well, it don't make a difference now. If you started off jumping on the panel talking about nonsense about they lying. Now y'all going radio silent apologists going radio say y'all can't. I don't think that's right. That's just me personally. I know we're all one in Christ, and it doesn't make a difference. At least come forth and be like, a point's made. Well, Lisa Fields and Dr. Banjo ain't say it, but they say some people have, believed such and such. He said he don't believe the number is great. He haven't looked deep into it, but he don't believe the number is that great. Lisa Fields and them, and they did do one video. Do y'all think black people, Hebrew Israelites, more and more people claiming it, and whatever. They ain't come back and say, well, earlier figures, we were wrong, this and that, but they're saying, yeah, there's some people that believe that, and it could be. Told y'all years ago, I'm lecturing out of town, and the dude was like, oh man, there's plenty of us. We in the church, and these Sunday going folk. And they say, yeah, we Israel. I told y'all I had side conversation with important people in that movement. See, I remember my grandmama and them saying A, B, C, and D. They'll never say it publicly. Them Negroes ain't even confess. Let me just let the video play. It don't make a difference. It don't make a difference. That's the new thing we're going with. The Bible say it doesn't make a difference, period. I don't care what Jay Jackson and heretics think.
Forth, I have to find a reason that there's something wrong with that information. And then when you start asking for sources, you find out that these people who are trying to debunk, they don't really have a lot of sources. All they want to do is wait for sources to come out so they can try to tear down these sources. But now there's so many of them, and they're so consistent that it's hard to tear down a consistent history, because it starts to show you that it's something inconsistent about the sources that they are pulling from. There's not enough of them. You can't corroborate it. So now let's come over here to 1864. This is a mission to Galele, King of Dahomey. And this is going to be at the Library of Congress, written by Sir Richard Francis Burton. Now, this is a screenshot of it, but if you come over here to the Library of Congress, right here, a mission to Galele, King of Dahomey, with notices of the so-called Amazons. If you guys heard of the Amazons of mythology, that comes out of Africa. It's also what the movie Woman King was about. It says the grand customs, the yearly customs, the human sacrifices, the present state of the slave trade, and the Negro's place in nature. You're going to look over here at Image 45, Volume 1. It was messing up earlier, so I went ahead and pulled it up early. So Image 45 is where I'm reading from. It's right here. Image 45 of Volume 1. You see it right here. So now,
if I was involved in apologetics and stuff, I would blow against dispensationalism anyway, because if it's going to bring about falseness with the heifer and the temple and them folk and lies, I wouldn't want other folk to fall into the lies and the deception. Because there's a good chance this guy or Benaiah, it's a good chance that Kanye and them basketball players heard some of their TikToks or somebody spreading some of this around. So he could be at fault, him and Benaiah and them, for putting this stuff, not the camp so much, for putting this stuff in Kanye and their minds and making them say what they say and making Ron Dalton write that book. I would put a stop to it anyway. I would try to put some work in. I would attempt to disprove it anyway. Can't let this run amok and go ahead, especially if it's dispensational talk and that's sin and that's wrong. We don't want to be in error. I don't know. It need to be fought against. That's my thing. It need to be fought against or at least disproven. Period. I'm of that opinion, but we'll wait another 8-10 years and see where it goes. If it grew so much in the last 8, we'll see. Y'all know more than me.
Let me zoom in. I'm going to read this to you right here. This was, when was this published? 1864. Yeah, publication date 1864. Let me see if it's on here. You guys can come pull all this stuff if you need to. Right here. Created, published, Tinsley Brothers, 1864. All right, so 1864 is where or when this was written. Now, after 2 years of constant quarreling, this is
now wait a minute. What is Michi talking about? Michi, have y'all traveled the world? Have you traveled the world? You think you Israel? You traveled the world? You sat down with Igbo chiefs? You done been to India talking to them Jews? If you traveled the world. It's not about believing everything you read. It's about reading through tons of info and coming. Oh, that's probably a conversation with Leo type 1.
This is part of the main text up here. But below that, you're going to see in the notes. These are the notes right here on that page. It says some of the kidnapping tales that still linger on this coast, it's talking about the west coast of Africa, show the straits into which at times men were driven for a cargo. At Annabom, where the people are Negro Portuguese, they are ever looking forward to hearing mass from the mouth of a priest. A Spaniard learning this, dressed up a pair of ecclesiastics, landed them, and whilst the function was proceeding, seized the whole congregation and carried them triumphantly to
J. Jackson, Fervent Charity, and Red Letter need to deal with this right here. Since it's about being bloodline, doesn't every individual who asserts a bloodline connection, listen to this, connection, have to prove their own descent? Seems like they're just making a claim. To most extent, it's just a claim being made. So there's been no advancement in the last 3 years in the information coming out. Can I connect some of this talk to Kanye West talking about we Judah? He was just talking about we Christian. He Christian. I tell you, the elder, a few people, 4 people specifically that I know that was rocking with us in Sunday Seminary believe they Israel right now. Sister E, 3 people, because Sister E came on believing it. Other people, after we started having the conversation, started looking into it. So we've lost 4 people. And 3, Sister E already came on in the cult. But she was quiet about it. I was the one, my mama said I was a troublemaker, fair use.
to market. One more time. Some of the kidnapping tales that still linger on this coast show the straits into which at times men were driven for cargo. At Annabom, where the people are Negro Portuguese, they are ever looking.
Okay, this is where we were with Garfield. Most sections said, no, we already know, because remember, he made the statement a couple of days ago when I was playing the video, just because Jews were in West Africa doesn't mean that West Africans are Jews. He said, no, we already accept that there were Jews in West Africa. That's them white folk Garfield was talking about. Them white folk Kimmy Kim was talking about are light-skinned Jews and that they married black women. But what does that have to do with these people proving that they're bloodline descent? They can say, Dante can read all the books we want. Does that mean these folk he talking about here are those folk? And JT Mack on the organ, he said, right, this with Red Letter, and I'm going to say that this is the foolishness we talking about. But let's keep going. Let's keep going.
looking forward to
I'm going to give them time to put the pieces together.
hearing mass from the mouth of a priest. A Spaniard learning this, dressed up a pair of ecclesiastics, landed them, and whilst the function was proceeding, seized the whole congregation and carried them triumphantly to market. So now, this right here tells you that these people were Negro Portuguese, and the Spanish person deceived them. And while they were having church, mass, he seized them and took them to this slave market. Negro Portuguese were put into the transatlantic slave market. This is consistent with what we've been saying the whole time. These were not what you call sub-Saharan Africans. These were Negro Portuguese. They had been expelled.
He's saying right now Negro Portuguese. The other guy in Zondervan over here in America, he said not the Negro. People came over here and they had signs, Negro girl for slaves. White man using the term Negro, not talking to black folk back in the days. Most excellent saying, J. Jacks. The logic seems to be, yeah, that's what he said. I think last week he said that Jews were in West Africa, same of which have been taken as slaves, some of which have been taken as slaves. Therefore, I am a bloodline descendant of Jacob. And does anybody else see this as a leap in logic? Are y'all thinking this through? Maybe that's why some people got to say all the slaves were. Because if some were, let's say half 50-50, and Jews were in West Africa, and these black Jews came in, it could be, is that too much of a leap of faith? That every other person's, if it was 50-50. Nobody but the camps are crazy enough to say everybody. I have a few loose stragglers with a camp heavy anointing on them. So even if it was 50%, some people say, well, at least that's a leap because beginning was nobody. No, there were, J. Jack saying 3 years ago, there were no Jews in West Africa. You were here 3 years ago, Matt. Where there were no Jews, or the Jews that were there were the light-skinned Jews that's controlling 47th Street, the Diamond District. They got them tunnels on Eastern Parkway. Or it's them that own the pawn shops and the banking in Europe. Like a lot of them CEOs in the charge of businesses and corporations today, them light-skinned folk, not Jews looking like me, J. Jacks. Garfield said them light-skinned Jews married black women. Timmy Tim said that too. The Jews married Negro women, not that the Negroes were Jews. They had a mulatto-type baby, the light-skinned bottle, and converted black Jews. But y'all don't want to hear that because y'all original. So y'all are arguing that the original Jew was dark and they converted and married them light-skinned folk. And the light-skinned folk are the converts, should I say. I want to go down and read now. All right, this is what it look at that what we talking about there. The Jew, I gotta do all this reading. The Jews that were the converts converted the Africans from what I've seen from some sources. Yes, they did convert. Yes. And those Jews were light-skinned Jews like the people in the wall of Dura Europa. They ain't like when Garfield said that. Timmy Tim said that. But not all Jews, because we had Solomon, if we believe the glory of the kings of Ethiopia, before all that stuff with Jesus and John the Baptist, Solomon's seed was already an African woman. And they went back, and some people said the Ark of the Covenant 1,000 years before Jesus, before Babylonian captivity. It was already dark-skinned people that descended from Solomon that was bloodline, that was practicing the religion, that had 1,000 Levites go back with the real Ark of the Covenant. That's how come in the 8th chapter of Acts, we see an Ethiopian that got his own scripture that came to Jerusalem to worship. I don't know. I'm going to leave y'all alone. She said black Jews converted. Where'd she get that from? He said that's just tradition.
From Spain and Portugal. If you guys have been following this study, the Spanish Jew is always dark. We've gone over this. We've seen the descriptions. So
Well,
now
wait a minute,
they're in this
Please come in. This is where we start with our
West
story.
African.
He said, how can the white Jew, how can white people live and flourish in hot tail West Africa? How white folk in South Africa and been there, descended from them Dutch and them white skin folk. The white folk been in Africa. All you need is suntan lotion, and some of them don't even need that.
Area. And in this West African area, you have the Kingdom of Judah. You have Sao Tome. Now we're going to talk about the Kingdom of Judah in a minute. Let me see. Matter of fact, let me pull up a map for you guys. All right, so this is probably the best known map, or the most well-known map, is created by Emmanuel Bowen, 1747. You can see this map on the Library of Congress. Let me click there real quick.
We had white folk was in Egypt. Not even before the city. White folk been around a long time. That's what I'm saying. We got to get our timelines together. The sun got black. Was no sunblock in Egypt. No, Egypt even had something to protect their skin. That's what Timmy Tim was saying the other day. They had suntan lotion. But then Dante was like, on the video, Dante said, well, I didn't know. Did he mention that, or somebody else mentioned that albinos need suntan lotion? White folk been there. Yeah, white folk been there. That's like when people make the argument, if you know history, when people make the argument, how can Jesus live in Egypt if Jesus was white? And it was white folk in 300 years before Jesus came to Egypt. White folk was in Egypt. They don't want a crown and everything. But they don't want that history. That's right, because y'all make Cleopatra and every dynasty from the 1st to the 33rd, every dynasty was white folk, was black folk to y'all. That's beef. Greeks dominated North Africa. They don't want the Greeks. They want the Greeks, Cleopatra. No, man, we can't even get into the history because them folk know better than we do.
Quick. Right here, a new and accurate map of Negro land in the adjacent countries. And if you come over here, you can see right here, Kingdom of Judah, or Widda, the slave coast, Widda, Judah. So now, this is the most famous map of this particular area. And so you will see people try to debunk this map. You can go down here, get all the information about it, see who was involved. You'll see people try to debunk this map. And I remember when this map really first started, getting out there to a lot of people. It had been out there, but when a lot of people started talking about it, people were trying to say it's fake and all kind of other things. So now, for years, I've been collecting these maps. This is the Kingdom of Judah, or Widda.
Okay, J. Jack said, show her where white tribes. No, these were white. From what I understand, these were white. They were they were like wandering Jews that were business people. They just been traveling around, just doing little stuff to get money and being involved in stuff that get money. They were doing business in Africa, and they met some pretty women that they wanted, and they ran up in, and they had babies with them. And them women started practicing the religion of the men that ran up in them, and the men were light-skinned. They said the map been debunked.
A mapping project on blackhistoryinthebible.com. You can find it there, bhitb.org. The earliest map I've been able to locate so far starts in 1707 France, and it spells it Judah.
That's one
so
of the
now
reasons.
we have all of these maps. There are 31 maps total that I found so far. They range from 17, what was it? 1707 all the way down to 1885. You see the Kingdom of Judah. Sometimes it's spelled Widda.
The Jews had money and businesses, and then y'all want to talk about Rothschild and them, how them Jews get the funding both sides of the war. How did they start getting involved in the blood diamonds? How did they start getting they've been in Africa. They've been dealing with diamonds and gold. They've been dealing with that stuff. So when the Swiss people, when them people in Geneva, when they started making them Rolex watches and all of that stuff, them folk was already on the scene to be connected with them from the gate, the light-skinned folk. It seems easily connected to me. Them light-skinned folk been around. And we got to connect during Europe. And there been some light-skinned folk. That's how come I don't pay the 13th tribe no mind. I'd rather ride with fervent charity. And I mean, like, it was a mass conversion back in the days. Herodotus before Herod, or back that time with Herod. Bad Jews converted, light-skinned folk converted to the religion or whatever. I'd rather go with that theory, or that these folk been them brown and them light people, and we were African. Jesus might have been the Bin Laden people. It's okay, but y'all don't want that. Y'all don't want a Bin Laden Jesus. It's either white Jesus, black Jesus, and that's who the war's in between. That's how most of y'all talk. Y'all not going to bring up the Bin Laden type of people because we're approaching the text with a black-white mind. But we can't deny what he's saying right here about black Jews. And if black Jews were there, we got to see how he walking through.
Waiter, witter, feeder.
Because church folk ain't hear none of this. At least we sitting there trying to go through this stuff and have discussions with each other. Them other folk be like, yo, they all a liar. They lied and they're liars. Well, shoot, if we go on with that, I done lied. I got some church folk don't lie. That means you throw everything out. Putin whole thing is a lie. That don't mean the whole awakening is no. We still gotta work. We still gotta look. Cops ain't gonna find one thing. Well, some may try to find one thing and just close the whole case. Everybody going to jail over there. No. That's not that simple. That's how Johnny Cochran had to get a dream team. Mess around with this awakening. We need a dream team together. People that specialize to go get specialists. Y'all see they had leader blood specialists on, and then Johnny Cochran trying to put the glove on. If it don't fit, they went and got the manager of the glove company. We gotta exhaust this thing. I know some people say we don't have to exhaust it. We just be in Christ.
Judah. You see these different spellings of the names on the maps, right? So now, when you come over to here,
what's the other guy? Rude Awakening. I gotta play some of that dude. I love that dude. Funny to me. He said the preacher sneaking over here and listening to us. He was in a Bible study with 1,400 people. He was just reading the Bible. Hell, Jay, the producer, just reading the Bible. He was just reading the Bible. But he's talking blackness and the conspiracy, and they lied. Why 1,400 people in a Bible study on a Shabbat, on a Sabbath? I'm just saying. They buying into the black delusion. If 1,400 people in Bible study and they're not selling drugs, they believe that Jesus died and rose again, but they just believe that they're Israel or they part of the church. The church ain't even having that discussion. They're heretics. They're devil worshipers. Or my family done got involved in it. They're doomed, pray for their soul. They're doomed for hell. Maybe they're not doomed for hell. They believe that he died and rose again. Y'all said them Catholics believe that he died and rose. Matter of fact, let me bring up that vocab, talking to the dead. Let me aggravate Mo Sexton. He done aggravated me all week.
This is the French source that I've told you guys about many times. This is from 1881 or 1890. This is from 1890. So right here, Weta, Feta, Weta, Weta, Judah, a Judah. And here's the translation. If you guys want to copy and paste it directly from this source, you guys can paste it over into Google Translate and it will translate for you. I've translated it on the website. You can do it however you want to. It says Weta, Feta, Weta, Weta, Judah.
The only person I can say Covey right here that ran down his family in Spain. I got the Spanish Cuba. I got about 5 of them videos lined up right now, and Covey pop in there. I know he ran his family down in Spain. Listen to what he say right now, Jay Jacks. I got sent this video. I started reading the sources and chasing the footnotes. That's important with research, everybody. The back of the book or the bottom, the footnotes, where they're leading you to. And started chasing the footnotes. I question if the entirety of the book was read. I know the entirety of the book wasn't read. He got too much stuff he's putting out too fast. Unless we can go with that same conspiracy about Aristotle and the libraries of Alexandria. How does dude come out with all these books? Is this stolen legacy? Did he have time to read all of this stuff? He probably figured he got the main point that he needed from the book. But Covey may not like the conclusion. Now, we've seen where people spoke about certain things like black Jews, and then Covey, I think that was Covey, said scroll down, then we scroll down, and it's them same light-skinned Jews from Eastern Parkway digging the tunnels with the two curls in the side of their head in the same book and the same sources Nathaniel was using. Is that deception? Remember yesterday, J.T. Maxx said, why can't it be we're Jews and they're Jews too? Why got to be we the real Jews and they the fake Jews? Oh, we asked that 5 years ago, can the awakening work without tearing down other people? That don't mean we love the white folk. We work for the white folk. That don't mean that. Folk just asking questions. Folk can't even talk around y'all.
Judah is a city old, frequented since the 16th century by Portuguese slavers who gave it its name. Its inhabitants were said to be the Judaquis, and they were indeed considered to be a remnant of the scattered tribes of Israel. To the north, the Alala River, whose real name is Ephra, had become Euphrates for scholars. So these people living in the kingdom of Judah right here, they were believed to be a remnant of the tribes of Israel. Why were they believed to be a remnant of the tribes of Israel? Well, the Portuguese were visiting this area. Who put these Jews in West Africa? The Portuguese. Sao Tome had been overrun by Jews, according to, let me go back up here, make sure I don't mix up the sources. This is from, let's see, Cambridge University. Sao Tome had been overrun by Jews. And then according to Cambridge University.
Okay, listen to this. This is what we're talking about right here. Meck said, yeah, I'm saying to read the source, but find, who's this? I'm saying to read the source, but read the source, but I'm already seeing the same source affirms the Jews in France and Germany. That's the white bottle Jews. Just like I'm saying with the pictures. They showed pictures. Nathaniel showed pictures with black Jews, but it was about 100 pictures. I said, Leo, scroll through everyone real slow. And most of the pictures were brown-skinned people and the other folk with two curls on the side of their head. Damn, I'm folded up. I need a new case. That's what's going on there. So what do we do with that? Are they dishonest? If he just challenged and said, who been through the prophecies, and they used that book, and it's light-skinned folk in that book affirming light-skinned Jews too. I told y'all, I remember when they was doing DNA, they said Dante DNA matched the DNA of them folk. That's affirming what the book is saying then. But y'all ain't saying that. And the camps that started pushing that, gotten out on the rest of them, they don't want DNA because they know some truth will come out probably. Oh, Lord. Kobe said, in fact, one of those sources called Christians true Israelites. They don't want to hear that. That's replacement theology. Then Leo tried to show y'all there were some early Israelites that believed in supersessionism, that the church in Israel won. So if they run around here saying the church saying they replaced us, they're lying, because the church in Israel is one new man. He said, oh, do their DNA match. Okay, touche. That's another way you could look at it. Do me a favor, Leo, who's a Christian in here? Most excellent. Who a Christian in here that is not claiming Israel? If you're a Christian, JT Mack, and you're not claiming Israel, do you believe the original Jews were black or a darker hue than what we see right now? If you're not claiming an Israelite, if you're a regular black Gentile Christian. You said it to me? Okay, I dropped my phone. I just put it on the bed. I'll get it in a minute. Typo 1.
University also here. They escaped from the island of Sao Tome. So this history is consistent. And so they escaped from the island of Sao Tome. We see that a congregation of Negro Jews has been kidnapped and sold into slavery in this book, A Mission to Galele, King of Dahomey.
Oh, for you in the house, somebody got to come here and pull this thing up. I can't put this thing on my screen from my phone because I don't got Messenger on my. Hold on a minute.
This was, what year is this written? This is
Yeah,
from
exactly.
1864.
Around-ish.
And then we see the map of the kingdom of Judah right
Well,
here.
you see what the whole
We see it
church believes.
again. We see the 31 maps. You guys can go through these on your own. The link will be there. We see that this area in this, let me see, issue date. Here you go, 1890. So you see an 1890 issue of this French bulletin that it says that Portuguese slavers visited this area and called it by these different names because they were considered to be a remnant of the scattered tribes of Israel. So now, hopefully, we're all on the same page. All of this stuff is historically.
Now, the scattered tribes, that's where the beef come from with Bruce, who was supposed to be scattered, and other descendants, and who y'all said came on the transatlantic slave trade was only Judah, was only what tribe? Only Judah. Who? Somebody go get Bruce with his new doctrine.
Consistent.
Then we got the confusing chart because only Judah's supposed to be in America, and that means the white men knew exactly. All right, Judah, all of you, half of y'all on the boat, the top level of the boat, y'all are Judah. Y'all get off here. We're gonna take these Benjamites. We're gonna take them over to the West Indies, or vice versa, because they stopped there first. I ain't gonna lie, it's a lot of twists. There's a lot of stuff to explain in all of this stuff.
So now I've read this before, and I'm going to read it again. The History of the Jews from the Destruction of Jerusalem to the Present Time. This was written by Hannah Adams. When was this published? I believe, let's see, it was digitized in 2006. Let's see, sold at the London Society House in 1840, but if I'm not mistaken, this was written in 1818. So you have this Hannah Adams book, written in 1818, 576 pages long. Now, let me see in the notes here. I'll read the notes in a second. Let's see. We'll start right here. This is going to be page 367, The History of the Jews from the Destruction of Jerusalem to the Present Time. It says,
we can't let this go. The source that Bruce backed by Benaiah Israel said those scattered tribes were them white folk in England. Father God, I can't make that up. That's a hard pill to swallow right there. Terrence Jones said, how can they distinguish who's? I got to call Bruce on that one. I got to say, don't say Lord, he said Lord. I got to see how Bruce want to explain that. Oh, I'm reading that Adams book and chasing the footnotes. It's been enlightening. Oh, that's the most recent person that he'd been talking about recently.
Even as late as the close of the 18th century or late 1700s, any person believed to be a Jew, whether he had previously appeared as a Catholic or not, would still be seized in Spain if discovered by the Inquisition. So this is happening during the transatlantic slave trade. They're overlapping events. We've already been established that. And again, people will try to separate them. The following is an extract from the decree of the Spanish government promulgated against the Jews July 22nd, 1800. This is 34 years before England ends slavery and the Inquisition on its side. His Majesty ordered his ministers to deliver no passports to Jews intending to enter Spain, whatever might be the motive of their journey, and whether they be desirous or not of making any stay in the kingdom. He enjoined the governors of the frontiers to prevent their entrance into the Spanish territories and to expel all who may be discovered in it. For a long time, the laws of this monarchy have forbidden all Jews to attempt transit or an establishment in the dominions of His Majesty. A late transgression calls for a rigorous reinforcement of the laws. The Spanish and Portuguese Jews claim their descent from the tribe of Judah and found these pretensions on a supposition which prevails among them that many of their ancestors removed or went into Spain at the time of the Babylonian captivity, Nebuchadnezzar's time. I've covered this before in the 580s BC. They were sent to Spain. So these are the same black Jews that Nebuchadnezzar sent into Spain. This is why the Portuguese Jews are always dark, and we keep seeing references to them being dark. They are connected to the black tribe of Manasseh, who were living among the Khazars. And also,
so when this started, nobody said there weren't no dark-skinned Jews. When this thing started, nobody, if from what y'all remember that's been around, nobody denied that there were dark-skinned Jews. Type of one.
to the black Jews of India. All of these are connected. The Nasrs of Afghanistan. These are all related black Jewish groups. It says, in consequence of this supposed superiority, they till very lately would not by marriage or otherwise incorporate with their brethren of other nations. They had separate synagogues, and if a Portuguese Jew, even in England or Holland, married a German Jewess, he was immediately expelled from the synagogue. Now, notice before, it was mentioned that they were mixing with the black indigenous population. When I did the Khazar study, I talked about them mixing with the black Khazars, but we're seeing here that they didn't mix with the Germans or white Jews. Something is going on here in history where we're seeing Jewish groups mix with certain people and not mix with certain people. They had separate synagogues, and if a Portuguese Jew, even in England or Holland, married a German Jewess, he was immediately expelled from the synagogue, deprived of every civil and ecclesiastical right, and ejected from the body of the nation. A late instance has occurred of a Jew in Berlin who, having married the daughter of a Portuguese physician, the parents of the girl, or the Portuguese Jewish parents of the girl, went into mourning as for the death of a relation. So they weren't just mixing in with everybody. This narrative of Jews mixed with everybody, so they became everybody, that's not historically accurate. We see that the Inquisition, they were rounding these people up and putting them into slavery. There's references to sundown towns going on, just like in America. There's references to ghettos, just like in America. The San Benito that was worn is the same outfit of the KKK. All of this stuff is connected. And we see it starts in Spain and carries on into the rest of the world. But if these people were putting these Jews into slavery, they weren't mixing with them. People weren't just willy-nilly mixing with the men of enslaved people. The men would go around and rape the women, but the men, the Jewish men, the Israelite men, were not freely mixing with all these women of other nations. It just wasn't occurring like people want you to believe it was occurring. That wasn't a thing. If you want to understand why, go back to the book of Nehemiah, where he had them put away the foreign wives and the mixed multitude. Go back to the book of Nehemiah and see where the correction started, and then show me historical evidence of these people just mixing in with all the other nations that they went to. And so now Jews look like everybody. Show me the historical documents that confirm this narrative that people have been pushing. Do me a favor. Give me one if you've read the historical documents that say Jews were just mixing with everybody as they scattered around the world. And two, if you've never seen that, because I've never seen it. I teach history. I study history. I've never seen it. I've never seen one of these documents. I only hear people saying it. But then when I start pulling out the documents and saying that they did not mix with these other people, but they did mix with black people, people have a problem with that. And so you have to ask yourself, wait, why are they mixing with only black people, but they're not mixing with none of these white people? So where did these pure Caucasian Jews come from? Go read the Kazuri. It tells you where they came from. And the reason people have such a big problem with it is because they say in the Kazuri that they are from Japheth. They are converts. So now we have this situation here. Hannah goes into talking about the Jews being of such reproach you could stab a man in the face and not be guilty. But let's
wait a minute. This is interesting right here. This is interesting, right? I'm gonna park right here. The footnote on the page before the one Dante is showing said the Jews have no way. I want Mo Sexton to hear that. No, I want Mo Sexton to watch Fervent Charity reaction. The Jews have no way to trace their genealogy. From the father or from the mother, the Jews have no way. The page before he say on the footnotes, on the same one right here you read.
Go back here, because remember, he said they.
I wonder if God meant it to be like
they claim their descent from the tribe of Judah. And if we come back,
What if I told you that instead of setting up a green screen,
J-Jack
you
said,
can
if I
just
say it
click a
again,
button
let
in
me
the
see. Hold
script
on,
and
let me
get
get rid of this.
to this map. So these Portuguese Jews claim to be Judah, and the Portuguese put them in West Africa on Sao Tome, and then they escaped from Sao Tome. And then we see the
But I think Covey explained that last time, why some of them would say through the mother and others would say through the father. J-Jack's saying right here, let me see. Let me take, I can't even see it. What I did. I'll say again, if they are white Jewish men and black African women and women, the lineage come through the mother, then the children aren't Jews. No, it depends who you ask. If it comes through the mother, and it's a Jew, and that's what Dr. Brown and them teach, and them people over there in Israel teach, not what One West teach. Yeah, you're still a Jew. If it was a light-skinned father that slept with an African woman. If I'm correct, right? Kobe type of one. The majority of them have been converts. That's why we've been saying this is all a waste of time. Let me call Fervent Charity. I don't see his comments. But I don't know how to pull it up on the thing. He said, let me see. He said he sent me this thing. Let me see. All right, let me let this play. I'm going to read my phone. I got a couple minutes.
establishment of the kingdom of Judah. Remember, they were putting Sao Tome in the late 1400s going into the 1500s. The slave trade doesn't start till 1619 officially in America. So you have this consistent history of Jewish people or Israelite people being enslaved, put into West Africa, and then you see the appearance of Judah and Witta on the coast of West Africa. And people say, well, that has nothing to do with these Jews. That has nothing to do with these Jews who say they're from Judah. It's a coincidence that Jews ended up in a location and there's a kingdom of Judah, but it has nothing to do with these Jews because Witta means bird. This name means bird. These people were birds. They descended from birds. Nonsense. We all know it's foolishness to throw in there that this name means bird. What is that? What does Witta being a bird have to do with where these people come from and who they descend from? Absolutely nothing. But you hear these ignorant people who think that's a valid argument, and they mostly come from the Christian side, and it is what it is. So now Witta or Judah is called that by the Portuguese because the Portuguese, right here, one more time, the Portuguese slavers who gave it its name, its inhabitants were said to be Judaquas, and they were indeed considered to be a remnant of the scattered tribes of Israel. So the Portuguese called it Judah or a Judah and called the inhabitants Judaquas. It gives you the names it was known by. It says they were believed to be the tribes of Israel. We know that they were deported there in the late 1400s by Portugal. And so now we see Hannah Adams saying that these people consider themselves to be from the tribe of Judah. So now if we read in the notes right before that, these notes are interesting. It says right here, it is said that in about 1755, when a terrible earthquake in Lisbon destroyed 30,000 of the inhabitants, the Portuguese believed that the mercy of God might be obtained by burning some Jews and other heretics in what they call the auto de fe, or act of faith. If you don't know what the auto de fe is, please look that up. It's when they started sacrificing human beings. The Christians started sacrificing Jews, God's people, to God in order to appease God. This was their line of reasoning. And so you can see how the treatment of Jews and Israelites around the world, no matter the color, if you just attach yourself to this name, people start to treat you differently. We see this reaction in the black church among the urban apologists. We see that their focus is on certain groups, but not on others. But if you attach yourself to the name, I'm not talking about bloodline versus non-bloodline right now. I'm talking about anybody who attaches themselves to this name ends up under some kind of persecution to some degree. So now it says it appears that the Jews have no accurate deduction of their descent or
what happened? I just looked through. What did I miss? Let me put the link out. I'm slow, y'all. I'm slow. Everybody's saying, pause. I missed something. What happened? The Spanish Jews claim. Oh, that's just no. That's the thing that you just sent me right here. The Spanish Jews claimed their descent from the tribe of Judah and found these pretensions on a suspicion. What's that say? Suppositions which prevail among them, and many of their ancestors removed. Or I can't read the bottom of that right there. Somebody come here and read that. I can't. Did I read that part right? That was the part I just reading on my phone. I can't read and their ancestors removed all of that other stuff. I can't see none of that.
Genealogy. They suppose that they are in general of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, with some among them of the tribe of Levi. Now, if you go watch my Khazar study, I point out that Eldad the Danite gives the location of all the other tribes except for Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. But if we follow, starting at Nebuchadnezzar, when he put them in Spain, you're going to have Judah, Benjamin, and Levi up towards Spain. Now, this is important because Hannah Adams is telling you that Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the southern kingdom, or the kingdom of Judah, was up in Spain. And it's the kingdom of Judah that gets persecuted and deported down into Sao Tome. Now, remember, I'm not just talking about the tribe of Judah, I'm talking about Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. They get deported into Sao Tome. They escape from the island, establish the king of Judah on the west coast of Africa, which again is labeled as the slave coast. Do me a favor and press 1 if you're following so far. Press 2 if this is all new to you and you've never heard any of this before. Again, no shame, because everybody has to start somewhere. 1 if you're following and somewhat familiar. 2 if you have never heard any of this before. So now we have multiple corroborations. We have Cambridge saying that these Portuguese Jews were in Africa and that they were black. They were deported. They were called Judaquist. This place was called this because these were the lost descendants or descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. We know that they were pushed here by the Inquisition. We know that they were being enslaved during the Inquisition. And so now let's keep going. All right, I got a couple more things. We're about to wrap this up. This is from the Grand Gazetter or Topographic Dictionary, Andrew Bryce, 1760.
Are you sick of having issues with your webinars, wasting tons of time on troubleshooting with attendees? If so, you need StreamYard on it.
So this is kind of hard to read over here. Let me see if I can zoom it in just a little for y'all. All right, so it's kind of hard to read, but I do have this written out on blackhistoryinthebible.com right here. So here's what it says. It says Gezvez, the river, and the village in Negro land. There's a screenshot of the section it's taken from, and you can see it right here. It's this section here. For those of you looking for it, this is going to be page. What page is this? It's like page 22. Let me zoom out. Page 622 on the right-hand side. All right. It says the river and village in Negro land. The river lies to the north and northeast of Bissau Island. The village 65 leagues above its mouth to the east and 40, I'm not sure what the FR is, Bissau to the south. The river running almost east and west. The people inhabiting the banks are partly Biafras and idolaters, partly Mandingos and Mohammedans or Muslims. The Portuguese have a factory on the banks. The village contains nearly 4,000 inhabitants, among whom not above 10 or 12 families of whites. The rest are all tawny or black, though they style themselves true Portuguese. So they're saying that these true Portuguese are black, and there's only 10 to 12 families of whites here. Again, it's talking about West Africa, the area where people tell us, no, you're sub-Saharan African. You can't possibly have anything to do with these Israelite people. And yet we're seeing all these accounts that there was these Portuguese in West Africa. This is during 1760 when this was published. So right here, Andrew Bryce describes 1760 Negro land only containing 10 to 12 families of whites, while the rest were black Portuguese. So again, you can see that here. So all this is consistent. We have black Portuguese in West Africa. They were taken into slavery. They were put there by the Portuguese and Spanish, and they were there during the transatlantic slave trade, and yet suddenly they disappear. So now, lastly, I want to look at Atlas Geographus, or a complete system of geography, ancient and modern, for Africa, containing what is most in blue, all of that. I'm not gonna read all that, but this is published January 1740 by John Nutt. 1714, I'm sorry, not 1740, 1714. So this is going back even further. Now, on this left-hand side of page 39, you will see all of this stuff, which is very hard to read. So because of that, I've read this before on here. I went through and I pulled out a few sections that are most important to note, but you guys can go through again. Left hand, the right page, page 39, but on the left column, this is where all this is coming from.
If you're 55 or over, did you know you could leave your loved ones with an inheritance of up to $300,000 with Senior Life Insurance?
Now, I'll read this part from page 39. Then there's another part from page 39, and then I'm going to compare it right here with what Ogleby says from page 34 of Ogleby's document from 1670. Now, this is why it's important to have the context of these dates. This is 1714, and it's going to be quoting from Ogleby, who wrote in 1670. So it says, Judaism was the religion of ancient Africans for a long time and succeeded by Christianity, but Mohammedanism, or Islam, prevailed in the 108th year of the Hijra. I have a note down here. This is 726 to 727 AD. This is roughly around the time of the Khazar conversion. Some people believe 760, I believe it was. So this is roughly before the time of the Khazarian conversion. And this is how, during the Khazarian conversion, you have the Muslim, the Christian, and the Jewish representatives from the story all standing there. So it says Judaism was the religion of ancient Africans for a long time and succeeded by Christianity. But Mohammedanism prevailed in the 108th year of the Hijra, when all the Jews, Christians, and professors of the African religion that could be found were put to death. Yet in the process of time, their intestine quarrels made them neglect Muhammad's law and revolt from the Caliph of Baghdad, for which they were severely punished by the Mohammedan caliphs, who caused all their books to be burnt on suspicion that the knowledge of the arts and sciences prompted them to condemn Muhammad's law. So again, we're talking about 726 to 727 AD or CE. Now, it goes on to say, the present Christians in Africa are partly strangers and partly natives, some of them slaves to the Turks and barbarians. Once again, the Turks come up, and others free. Some of the Jews who inhabit both sides of the Niger derived themselves from Abraham. So there were black Jews living alongside the Niger River. Because remember, there's only 10 to 12 families that this other person says they saw. And now we're hearing about Jews living alongside both sides of the Niger. Derived themselves from Abraham. Others fled hither from Asia when Vespasian destroyed Jerusalem. That's 70 AD. So you have a group coming in from 70 AD who fled the destruction of the temple. We also see that occur in India with the Jews of Cochin, India. You had the black Jews, who the ancient Jews who came there earlier, and then you had the white Jews who came there after the destruction of the temple by Vespasian. So now this source from the 1700s is saying that some of the Jews came into Africa. We've read this over and over and over again, that a lot of them came into Africa. The majority went into Africa. Let me see. When Vespasian destroyed Jerusalem, or from Judea when it was destroyed by the Romans, Persians, and Saracens, and Christians. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain in 1462, from the Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and from England in 1422. So it's talking about the multiple migrations that, or the multiple situations that forced Jewish migration into Africa, specifically West Africa. These all differ in habit and are divided into several wealthy and numerous tribes, but have no dominion, are despised of all nations, and so abominated by the Turks that they are not admitted to be Mahometans or Muslims unless first baptized and then made use of only to receive their customs and gather in their taxes. Now, if you guys go back to one of my previous studies where I talk about the Copts and the people of Egypt being black, the Nubians, the Ethiopians, the Egyptians, and the Israelites, all separating themselves by race and religion. They were Jacobites. And then you had the white Greek Melkites. They all separated. They all hated each other. They did not intermarry with each other. And when the Muslims came in, or the Arab invasion took place, the people of Egypt, the black people of Egypt, made a league with the Muslims to kick out the white Greek Melkites out of Egypt. So now this right here is all from page 39 of the source I'm talking about. Now up here, he was quoting somewhat from Ogilby, who published this in 1670. And I note this right here. It says, Nutt quotes extensively from Ogilby, but does not always make note of it. The above quote is almost word for word what Ogilby wrote in his 1670 book. Now, that is one thing about John Nutt. He does not always give credit when he takes almost exact quotes, and he will change them partially. But because I'm familiar with the Ogilby work, when I read it, I said, this.
See that, Ruddy Brew, you might think they're not impressed with what they're hearing, Ruddy Brew. A lot of these folk, they might be getting you excited, but they're not really impressed with some of this stuff they're hearing.
Sounds exactly like what Ogilby wrote. So this is what I just read was from John Nutt from 1714. The following is from Ogilby in 1670. It says, many Jews are also scattered over this region. He's talking about the Nile. Some boasting themselves of Abraham's seed, inhabiting both sides of the Niger River. Other are Asian strangers who fled either from the desolation of Jerusalem by Vespasian, or from Judea, wasted and depopulated by the Romans, Persians, Saracens, and Christians, or else such as came out of Europe, whence they were banished, out of some parts of Italy in 1342, out of Spain in the year.
Type of one, if you believe in this, or is something we need to look into compared to the history that we've been taught. Type 2, if this is nonsense to you and a misusing of sources.
Year 1462, out of the Low Countries in 1350, out of France in 1403, out of England in 1422. These all differ in habit and are divided into several tribes, having no dominion, though both wealthy and numerous, but despised of all nations, and so abominated by the Turks that they are not admitted to be Mahometans unless first baptized, and then no otherwise made use of than to receive their customs and gather in their taxes. And John Ogilby is going.
Russell Higgins said, if it got to do, now we black folk, Spanish folk, Mexican folk in here, and you saying if it ain't got nothing to do with black, we don't want to hear it. Is that because Russell Higgins under the delusion that we worshiping a white Jesus? Or just because he ain't white, automatically he's black, and we got to accept what y'all Israelites are saying the 400 years, and we the people? And throw supersessionism away, we gonna rule over white folk. Which one is it?
It's going to be written in Old English for those wondering about the difference in how stuff is spelled. So what we see here is a very...
Because y'all might be trying to shame us into worshiping white folk, and nobody worshiping no white folk. No white Jesus. But y'all will say that.
Very consistent history. We see that In Spain, the Jews were ran out and ended up in Portugal. And then in Portugal, they were forced out of the country or put into slavery, and they had their kids taken.
And my thing is, what difference does it? I'll say what difference does it make? Because there's mad people in here that's claiming Israel. They ain't got no assembly. They don't keep no feasts. They don't wear no fringes. They work on the Shabbat, but they blowing at the Christmas tree, the Easter egg in the church, talking about we wrong. Russell said he just want to know the truth. But if you Israel and you got to obey the master, y'all got to keep the feast. Ain't certain things perpetual? That's how I said we got hypocrisy on both sides.
Taken away and put in Sao Tome. Sao Tome became.
Or they're going to say y'all got a freedom to keep the feast or not to keep the feast. That is the question.
Overran by Jews and started killing all of the Portuguese priests that were sent down there to get them under control. And then, according to Cambridge, at some point, these people started escaping from the island and they started populating.
Now, here this other crazy go. He said, I believe what the Bible say. Go build an ark. Go build an ark. I believe what the Bible say too. What that mean? What that got to do with this history?
In West Africa, we see that there were blacks claiming to be Portuguese all throughout the history. We saw that happening from early on all the way into the 1800s, according to Cambridge University. We see that the place called Ajuda or Judah was where they believed these people to be in West Africa. We also see that it is labeled as the Slave Coast. And we also know that according to Hannah Adams, these people.
Now listen to Colby. Let me read this right here. The truth is, from what I've seen, most of the people that claim Israel are fighting for our identity. They don't even keep or embrace. They don't even keep. What do y'all think about that? Or there's a freedom to if you want to, if you don't want to, or it really just got to do with it's residue of black power needing an identity, Kofi. That's what some people are arguing. And is Christ not enough? It goes into a lot. Now, how much of this is connected with, because ain't none of y'all, I don't think nobody here pick cotton, but y'all are connected with the picking cotton doctrine, the pain of segregation, Jim Crow, and all of that. And it's real.
People claim.
Most excellent say, y'all just need a hug from some white. Oh, these people stupid.
To be part of the tribes of Judah, Levi, and Reuben.
Man.
So when people say that we're crazy and we're making all this stuff up, it's just not.
Okay, all right. This one said, I know many Christians. What it said? I know many Christians that smoke, fornicate, and smoke weed and lie. Christianity is built on Christ, not what Eddie Long do. Not what Christians do. Now, Christians, should they die with it? Absolutely not. We shouldn't. But this thing is based on Jesus, not white folk having slaves, not Peter cussing. It's built on Jesus and who Jesus is. That's what Christianity is built on. And that's what we should remember. Most people have said that what's the word I'm looking for? When everybody deconstruct their faith and they walked away, now they're a witch. I'd be like, bro, you a witch because Rabbi Zachariah? You a witch because of Reverend Ike? No, you a witch because that's in your heart. We got to call it for what it is. I told y'all I'm in the condition I'm in because of my actions. Actions will take you a long way, even if you're not saved, if you don't believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. Your actions will take you a long way. We want to blame the devil. We want to blame Christians. We ill with it. That's all I'm saying. We ill with it. Now, matter of fact, let me stop this right here. Let me ask y'all a question. Y'all running around there, because I played Big Judah the other day, and Big Judah said, these white folk trying to cut us off from talking to the ancestors. The other lady said she was praying to Father Enoch. So y'all in Israel, y'all ill too, but we got to be quiet. Because in all actuality, there's many people in the church, because we say the church don't want the Israelites, but the church embraced Catholicism. All right, we have some problems with our Catholic brothers and sisters, but they embraced the Catholics. And to be honest, the Israelites and the Catholics got more in common than us Protestants and the Israelites, down to the books that y'all believe. More and more people are praying to the dead. Dana Stevens done took a whole bunch of Israel talking about the branches coming together and got y'all picking up Mormon doctrine. Y'all don't know, it's crazy out here. Let's play some of this because we was talking about the Eastern Orthodox Church praying to the dead. Is Adam and Eve really dead? Is Mary really dead? Is John the Baptist really dead? Can you talk to Peter right now? Most excellent said, well, Jesus and the Catholic guy, I was getting into that Catholic guy, they sharp though. He was a priest, Jesuit. He was sharp now. They said, did Jesus talk to the dead on the Mount of Transfiguration? You know, the King James Bible said that his raiment became cleaner than any filler that any cleaners could clean, came whiter than white. Let's listen to some of this. Talking to the dead, is it biblical or not?
To pray to humans, even if they're dead. Even if your Roman Catholic friends tell you, well, they're not really dead because they're in Christ. You can't.
Now be careful, because you folk, before y'all folks start coming with your nonsense, I done seen some of y'all down south in New York. I done seen some of y'all. I said, I promise y'all, when I seen you black folk go to the cemetery and sit up a grill and like y'all on the beach for Memorial Day, for the 4th of July, and you out there talking to Grandpa. Grandpa, look at your grandbaby. I wish you would have seen him here now. He in the 3rd grade. You talking to the dead. And you having dinner with the dead. Going to the grave, pouring out a drink for the homies. And you told me, oh, you got shot 3 years ago. I still miss you, like it was you talking to the dead. Plain and simple.
Can't do that. Show me a place in the Bible where it said pray to a dead fellow Christian. You won't find it. You only see prayers directed to God in the scripture.
And we don't say, and that's the problem, we don't say dead. We say they're asleep. That's a euphemism that we use like Lazarus, and that's what they say. They said they're alive in Christ, and they start talking about a great cloud of witnesses and things of that nature. So they got scripture to get it on with. All right, so for this reason that, that's the whole thing. But I got to leave that to Matt and them. Did Jesus go to hell? To the grave. Let's put it that way. With your Endor doctrine. I'm gonna let it play.
Prayer empowers us to do. It empowers us to live under the authority of the triune God. Listen, if you are a Christian, your life is one where you say, I am under the authority of the triune God, meaning we don't claim ourselves as our own. You know, in the world, they say, I'm grown. I do what I want. I don't have to answer to anybody. The Christian can never say that. At least they shouldn't. We do answer to God. Now, every person, whether they acknowledge it or not, answers to God, right? We understand he is our creator. We owe him. But the Christian, by God's grace, acknowledges it now. What prayer does, as we talk about this tonight, this very important subject that we always come to and we feel guilty because we all know we should pray more. We know that. We'll get there. It reminds us of our weakness and our frailty and the fact that we are under his authority, that we are dependent upon him, that we're not just doing it on our own. You know the phrase self-made man, self-made woman. What does that mean when people say that? People say he's a self-made man. Right. No one ever helped me. I got right, that all that, right? No one is a self-made man. How foolish. You're sitting around with lungs you didn't make, breathing air that you don't own on time that is borrowed. And if you're eating, it's because God sent rain for those crops and those cows that ate the crops and everything else. And you didn't choose to be born. That was your mom and dad got together and things happened and here you are. It's just, we so easily become convinced We kind of did it here. Some of us think that we're gonna live forever. Literally, they'll figure it out before it's my time to go. I'm gonna live forever. You're surprised how many people really think they will live forever. Live forever. Dictators tried it. Ted Williams froze his head. Some of you guys are like, who's Ted Williams? You have to know baseball history. It's from another era. But you're not going to live forever, and you are utterly dependent upon God and the fellow creatures he's put on this earth. Prayer reminds us of that. We are utterly dependent, and that's why when we pray and thank God for our food, we're reminding, it helps us be reminded it's ultimately from God, right? Ultimately, it's from God. Even if you worked it and you paid for it, if someone else bought it, ultimately it's from God. Prayer reminds us of that. That's why Christians tend to pray around mealtime for their meals. If you don't pray at all, it's been a real struggle for you. You're that Christian. The best places, make baby steps. Pray before and after you eat. Not out of religious ritual. Some people won't pray before their meals just because other Christians do it. Well, I'm a Christian, but who says we have to pray before our meal? Just want to be rebellious because other Christians do it. We can't do it. I know Christians like this. I'm not just making this stuff up. We pray after. That way we're thankful for what if it wasn't good, bro? So I'm just kidding. No, but it's okay. And there's a reason why. You're reminded. And you know what? If you eat 2-3 times a day, some of you, that's 5 times a day, 6 times a day. You get to at least make an entrance into the prayer life.
Who pray over their food every time even if you out to lunch outside, who pray over their food all the time? Type of one, if you pray over your food all the time. Or that ain't even no big thing because you give thanks in the morning anyway. So whatever in all things you give thanks. Oh, let me see if this thing works. Was this computer cut off?
You want practical tips? Pray every time you eat. This is not a religious thing that's going to all of a sudden, but if you need baby steps, a place to start, pray. You thank God. It's such a perfect time. You cannot make it without a certain amount of those meals, can you? And it reminds you of that. Prayer is that for us. Everybody gets arrogant. Americans might be especially prone to getting arrogant because we're sort of a world unto our own. We don't need the rest of the world in certain ways. Now, the world is flat, it's interconnected, but I'm saying other places, they're landlocked, they're utterly dependent on outside sources. Less so here. It's very easy. We just have our own media. Other places got to watch our media, and it's all subtitled. Imagine that for your whole life. Tom Cruise, talking whatever. We get to hear Tom Cruise in English. Isn't that great? I don't know if it really is. My point is, though, it's easy for us to forget our level of dependence. That's what I'm saying. Prayer reminds us of that. It reminds us we're under his authority. It reminds us of that. That's a good thing because our tendency is to forget that. Prayer is to the glory of the triune God. The reason why I keep on putting triune God in here is because it reminds us when we say God, not just a generic man up in the sky, big man upstairs. It reminds us we come to the Father through the Son by the Spirit. Prayer is triune. I'm not saying if you say God or Jesus, you're wrong or it's bad. Remember Benny Hinn? Good morning, Holy Spirit. Remember that? He said we need to pray the Holy Spirit more. I don't know about Benny Hinn or that particularly, but I know that prayer is triune, and that includes the Holy Spirit most certainly. And it's to God's glory, because if you think prayer is just asking God for things, you forgot there's prayers of praise. You forgot there's prayers of adoration. That's why you're here tonight, to be reminded of this. So it's to the glory of the triune God. Prayer empowers us to live under the authority of the triune God and to the glory of the triune God and in the presence of the triune God. The Brother Lawrence book, Practice of the Presence of God or whatever. Brother Lawrence is he's like a dishwasher in a monastery. And I think he's just kind of known for that book. The reason why it's cool is that he was a dishwasher in a monastery is because he would talk about in the just basic daily life, mundane things, praying to God. And it doesn't have to always be like this, although there's nothing wrong with that, is there? He's talking about as he's washing dishes. Some of you lazy teenagers have never washed dishes, so you don't have that chance to pray while you're washing dishes. But pray while you wash dishes. And it wasn't always these long prayers he would talk about. But his spirituality was throughout the day. Drip, drop, here, there. And it's practicing the presence of God. A lot of the bad, shady stuff we do when we think no one's looking, we wouldn't do if we remembered we were in the presence of God. Prayer will help you get there. You can practice that by prayer, prayer, prayer. Everything's not an automatic machine gun. Sometimes it's just a single shot with your prayer. Make an analogy, people. So it's prayer, soli Deo Gloria. When you see that, see the SDG? That's my set. Just kidding. If you see SDG, what's it stand for? Soli Deo Gloria. That actually appears in quite a few places. Wasn't it Bach? Was it Bach? Somebody know? They would sign at the end of each one of his little musical matter, whatever, SDG. He would write SDG because he was a better person than Beethoven, who was an awful person. And Bach, I do believe it was Bach, wanted all of his music to be to the glory of God. And so when you see someone write that, you know, there's a real Christian, SDG. They know what that means. Because it's something that Christians have signed throughout the ages at various times, just to remind them, SDG. They were reminding themselves, this is to the glory of God. Don't put it in your next term paper, though, because it's not a footnote. It's not your name. They'll probably get counted off. But you can just think, SDG. Prayer is for God's glory. Everything in the Christian life ultimately is designed for God's glory. If you saw a prosperity preacher and he told you God's will is to make you rich, God's will is to never let you be sick, God's will is to get you that wife, that husband, and you said, I'm in. That's not the Christian message. Everything is designed for the glory of God.
And Johnny Mack, I was going to play a video. Johnny Mack will say, because there's a lot of people that set God up for failure, will tell people, you know, we give them the wrong pretense. You come to God, you get saved. You come to God, He's going to give you everything you want. Like God is a genie. And then when it don't work out for them, that husband don't come. You heard the other sister after 15 years, she felt God used her because He didn't fulfill the promise. And all this other stuff is nonsense. We lining people up for that. Does God promise you that your life going to change and be so much better if you come to serve Him? You're not going to go through any persecution. You're going to have everything you want. Fair use.
We are here as slaves, as servants for His glory. Very counterintuitive. The world says, if it don't make you happy, why do it? The Bible says there's something deeper than just temporary happiness. And when you live your life to the glory of God, you'll find more ultimate fulfillment because that's your chief end. Why am I saying that? Prayer helps us to do this. Prayer is designed for this. Some of you thought prayer was just essentially a shopping list that you take to God. I want this, I want this, I want this, I'd like that, I want this. And thank you very much, the end. But that's not what prayer is. That might be part of prayer because it is for our benefit, but not in that way. Properly defined, because there's instances where people talk about prayers, but properly defined within a Christian theological biblical context, it's not really prayer. Prayer ultimately is discourse with the triune God. If you don't like the word discourse, just think, in essence, communication. Prayer is communication with the triune God. That's the simple version of it. This is why, because this basically is the right biblical definition, in essence, when you sum it all up, it's inappropriate to pray to humans, even if they're dead. Even if your Roman Catholic friends tell you, well, they're not really dead because they're in Christ. You can't do that. Show me a place in the Bible where it said, pray to a dead fellow Christian. You won't find it. You only see prayers directed to God in the scripture. Now, you'll see sometimes pagans praying, but how did they do it? Remember Baal versus Elijah, the prophets of Baal? cutting themselves. Oh, don't cut yourself when you pray. That's not how we do it. That doesn't seem like Christian prayer, does it? Because it's not. That's what the pagans do. Prayer is discourse with the triune God. And that's why I need to say something. Yes, it can be your thoughts. There's times we got to do silent prayer. But ultimately, prayer is designed to be speech uttered. What about someone who's mute? God knows they're mute. They won't always be mute. You're not mute, so you can talk when you pray. Ultimately, it's supposed to be that way. It's not just, as the old timers say, go in your prayer closet, send a couple thoughts up, and walk out. There's a verbal element. Even Elijah, before that showdown on Mount Carmel, he prayed a prayer. It was brief. It was quick. I don't know how many of these and thous he had in there. Might have had a few. But it was out loud to God. That's the preferred way. And that helps you too. I know for a fact, my silent prayers, just my thoughts, it's way easier for me to fall asleep and forget what I'm doing or do something else in my head. It will help you. If you're saying, I'm having trouble, I can't even, try to say it out loud. I'm not saying it's going to fix all your problems. You still might wander in this, but it's a good start out loud. Prayer is discourse with the triune God. Now, here's what prayer isn't. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a lot about what prayer isn't. So that's why you can't read it, because it's crossed out up there on purpose. Prayer is not merely you creating a positive mental attitude. You ever had a basketball coach? Visualize the ball going into the rim. Visualize you cooking your opponent. If you can think of it, then it is more likely to happen on the court, right? Does anybody have a coach like that? Trying to be like Phil Jackson type of thing, right? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? The positive prayer is not merely that. Or prayer is not just you getting in the right frame of mind, right? Hey, nice shirt. Prayer is not that. Now, although I have a little asterisk, your kingdom come, your will be done. What's that from? Your kingdom come, your will be done. Yes, that's right. Prayer certainly will shape the way we think it should as we pray truth that we may not even sometimes feel. And so everything here has a caveat, meaning that's not what prayer is, merely creating a positive mental attitude, but prayer will shape properly the way you think as you say, your kingdom come, your will be done. And even that little line in the Lord's Prayer throws away the prosperity gospel stuff that says you can tell God what to do. He's contractually obligated to obey your commands in this world, amen? Because, right, you ever heard this? God is not contractually obligated to do what you tell him. He's not a genie. He's not blue. You can't rub him the right way and get what you want. That's why we say, your kingdom, not my kingdom. Your will be done. You are allowed to pray according to the will of God. What I mean is you say, if it be your will. You pray, you say, here's what we know, here's what I want, here's what I think. But your will. Jesus did that, didn't he? Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. Jesus has two natures. He's human and he's divine. Jesus, as a full human being, would have to be a psychopath to want to be on a cross and be naked and nailed in front of everybody and die that way. So that prayer was a real prayer. But nevertheless, he says, your will be done. Prayer is not merely an inner pep talk. So I said to self, right? You guys know those, right? Is that what prayer is? You're not talking to yourself. There's people, some of you got weirdo counselors and therapists at some point in your life. That's okay, you pray. I also do little talks to myself so I can. That's not what prayer is. They'll try to relate it to that way. Prayer is not merely an inner pep talk of you talking to you. It's you talking to God. This is not self to self. Note to self. Next, right? That's not what prayer is. Now, it'll affect yourself. And there are some interesting lines in the Psalms which are filled with prayers where David, I think, says in Psalm 42, I said to my soul, it's like he's preaching to himself. So everything has a caveat. But ultimately, prayer is not an inner pep talk. And it's not self-stimulation. It's not blank, empty meditation. Now, we do meditate on God's word, but that's different than contentless meditation of the word. Clear your mind. Now, if they mean put down the troubles of the world, don't think about your sin, don't get tempted right now, okay, but I don't think that's what they mean because it's very Eastern. Clear your. We meditate, but what do we meditate on? It's content-driven, the word of God. And you know what else prayer isn't? What's that last one say? All at once, 1, 2, 3. Prayer is not magic. It is not, oh, I messed up the formula. I said the word wrong, so therefore it won't work. Let me try it again. It's not a magic formula guaranteed for success where you're manipulating God. That's what the pagans thought. If we sacrifice our babies to this pagan god, he will send the rain. If we have relations in this God's temple in front of him, he will bless our relationships. If we give him some of our crops, we're not manipulating God. He's like, I don't need none of that stuff. You're not manipulating. God's not tricked. He's not fooled. He's like, oh, I don't see through them. Prayer is not that. It is not a chemical formula where God says, okay, right? I got to do it. Put in the right coordinates. It happens. Prayer is not magic. And it's not superstition. Prayer is communication with the triune God.
Today